Chapter 2002. However, she felt that in Ji Yuqi's eyes, Hua Jin was a commodity without any value other than a money tree. She couldn't feel how much Ji Yuqi cared about Hua Jin. At least, even if she cared, it was only about how much profit she would lose after the loss of a commodity. She was too cold. From the moment she entered the ward until now, what Ji Yuqi mentioned the most was the series of losses brought about by Hua Jin's injury. In fact, in Ji Yuqi's eyes, Unspoken was a problem. To Hua Jin, she was a problem. To her, she was even more of a problem. Earlier on, when Hua Jin revealed his longing and yearning for Unspoken, she had ruthlessly interrupted Hua Jin's thoughts. On the surface, Ji Yuqi was his manager, but in reality, she was the guardian, that woman placed by Hua Jin's side. She monitored Hua Jin's every move. Hence, she was extremely guarded against Unspoken. Unspoken suddenly asked, "What's the situation with Xin just now?" Ji Yuqi thought for a moment and said, "I heard that she was robbed in the middle of the night. When she resisted, she was stabbed twice by the robber and died on the spot. So pitiful." She thought that it was Hua Jin and cried for a long time. In the end, she got the wrong person and made a mistake. Luckily, Hua Jin didn't see this scene. Otherwise, he would definitely laugh at her like an idiot. The apple was peeled, cut into pieces, and placed on a plate. Ji Yuqi wiped her fingers with a wet tissue and looked up. Her face had returned to its usual cold expression. "Sure, I want to talk to you about something." As for me, I hope you can keep a distance from Hua Jin." As Ji Yuqi spoke, she placed the plate on the table and looked at her warily. "You're too close to him." Unspoken was stunned for a moment. She looked at her questioningly and curled her lips. "What do you mean by that?" "I know. It's Hua Jin who has been trying to get close to you. However, you should also know that a child like Hua Jin is still immature. He has no idea what kind of price he would have to pay for doing such a thing." Unspoken suddenly interrupted her coldly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Then I'll be straightforward." Ji Yuqi suddenly raised her eyebrows and smiled deeply. "Didn't anyone warn you to keep a distance from Hua Jin when you stepped into this circle?" Unspoken frowned. Of course, someone had warned him. Qin Zhou alone had warned him more than once. However, she did not know the reason. "Why?" "Because, if you get too close to him, you'll hurt him and yourself," Ji Yuqi said honestly. "Shut up." Hua Jin's irritated scolding suddenly came from the bed. Ji Yuqi and Unspoken were startled and looked at the bed together. "Hua Jin, you're awake." "You're awake?" they asked almost in unison. Hua Jin had woken up unknowingly. He slowly opened his eyes and glanced coldly at Ji Yuqi from the corner of his eyes. However, there was a look of disgust in his eyes. It was an inexplicable hostility. It was obvious that Hua Jin and Ji Yuqi did not have a good relationship. Most artists and managers, even if they were not as close as family, would at least get along well with each other. From the plane ride, it was obvious that Hua Jin was quite cold towards Ji Yuqi. Sometimes, when he spoke to her, he was very impatient. It was as if he did not hear her words. Chapter 2003. Hua Jin wanted to get up, but Unspoken stopped him immediately. "You can't move yet. Your wound has just been stitched up. If you move around, the stitches will come off." Her concern warmed his heart. He smiled warmly and nodded. I'll listen to you." He was as obedient as a little lamb. Even Ji Yuqi was surprised. "Yeah, Hua Jin, don't move around. Be careful of your wound. You talk too much." Hua Jin looked at her and his face turned cold. "Did I ask you to speak?" Ji Yuqi wanted to say something but stopped herself. She pursed her lips awkwardly and then brought over a cut apple. "Have some fruit." Go away. Hua Jin waved his hand. Crash. The container fell to the ground and broke into pieces. Yunshushu widened her eyes in shock. Get out. I don't want to see you. Hua Jin, get out. Didn't you hear me? Hua Jin stared at her angrily. Ji Yuqi had no other choice. She bit her lip and stood up awkwardly. Then she told Yunshushu, please take care of him. With that, she turned and left the ward. With a bang, the door was shut tight. Hua Jin supported himself on the bed with both hands and tried to sit up. Yunshushu walked over immediately and said, can't you just lie down? I want to sit up. Hua Jin pouted and whined like a willful child. Yunshushu couldn't do anything to him. She raised the bed board a little and carefully helped him sit up. She also stuffed a few soft pillows behind his back to make him more comfortable. Hua Jin looked at her in silence. His face was pale and he looked a little helpless. He was so nervous that he didn't know where to place his hands. When Yunshushu sat down, she looked up and saw him staring at her. Why do you keep staring at me? That's nice. So, the feeling of being taken care of is so warm. Hua Jin murmured in satisfaction. Yunshushu was stunned. Is there no one to take care of you? Hua Jin shook his head and pursed his lips. Only you. Yunshushu couldn't help but feel suspicious. Hua Jin patted the edge of the bed, don't be so far away from me. We can be considered comrades who have gone through thick and thin together. Who's your comrade? She pouted coquettishly and then sat closer to him. Hua Jin said coquettishly, come closer. Yunshushu couldn't stop him and sat closer to him. When she sat closer, Hua Jin held her hand. Yunshushu felt as if she had touched a piece of hot iron and subconsciously flung it away. Hua Jin's facial features instantly contorted in an exaggerated manner. It seemed that her action of flinging his hand away had affected his wound, and he was in so much pain that he looked hideous. When Yunshushu saw this, she was so shocked that she immediately got up and went up to him. What's wrong? Did I hurt you? I just wanted to use your hand to get some warmth. You're so rough. He complained in an aggrieved manner, which made Yunshushu even more regretful. She immediately handed over her hand obediently and coaxed, I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. Let me hold your hand, okay? No. Hua Jin raised his head lazily, looking as if he was unworthy of her status. Yunshushu was defeated by him and held his hand without any explanation. His hand was so cold. She didn't know if it was because he had lost too much blood. Chapter 2004. His hands were so cold that there was no warmth at all. She wondered if it was because he had lost too much blood. Hua Jin's eyes flickered. He gently held her hand, and the corners of his lips could not help curling into a satisfied smile. Her hands were so warm. It was a warmth that he was extremely greedy for. Actually, this kind of injury was not painful at all. In the past, he had a few of his ribs broken. That kind of pain was heart-wrenching. However, he could be considered to be lucky. If it had deviated by a few inches and hurt his organs, he would have been in deep trouble. But only God knew that he did not think so much at that time. He only wanted to protect her. He did not see when Muwanra had a dagger in her hand. He only knew that she was coming at him aggressively. He quickly pushed Yunshushu away. But he did not expect that she would stab him with the dagger. But he did not regret it. Thinking about it, it was still frightening. He did not know where this crazy woman came from. Who is she? Hua Jin asked about Muwanru. Yunshushu did not react at first. She only came back to her senses when he asked. A thief. A thief? Hua Jin did not know whether to laugh or cry. I saw that she was wearing a patient's gown. She seemed to have escaped from a mental hospital. Mental hospital? Xianxia was suddenly alerted when he mentioned it. Mental hospital? She remembered that hospital. It was the most famous mental hospital in the capital. They were very strict with their patients. How did she escape? She did not know why Mu Wanru was in the mental hospital. She thought that Mu Yaja had dealt with her. But the flight from the capital to Sea City took 3 to 4 hours. Putting aside how Mu Wanru escaped from the mental hospital, could she have bought a plane ticket and boarded the plane? Flying from the capital to Sea City? It was a little too laughable. She was so crazy that even the airport would not allow such a dangerous person to book a plane ticket. And that suspicious message. Qin Zhou said that he did not send such a message. Qin Zhou's character was absolutely trustworthy. It was impossible for him to toy with her. With Mu Yaja around, even if he ate a bear's heart and leopard's guts, he would never become a ghost. So what was going on? For a moment, Xianxia's mind was in a mess, and she was speechless. Hua Jin saw her silence and thought that she was unwilling to talk about it, so he said, "It's okay if you don't want to talk about it. People always had a past that they didn't want to look back on." Xianxia suddenly grabbed his hand. There was something fishy about this. He had to get to the bottom of this. The first person she thought of was Song Enya. The most important person she had ever offended was Song Enya. If the latter was behind this matter, then everything made sense. Song Enya was capable of bringing Mu Wanru out of a mental hospital without anyone noticing and transporting her to Sea City. If he could get rid of her through Mu Wanru, the most optimistic outcome would be that the 2 thorns in his flesh would perish together. That would be great news for her. Even if she did not die, she would be stained with blood from the current situation. Now that she was suspected of murder, and there was no reasonable evidence to prove her innocence, she did not know if Hua Jin's testimony could save her any leeway. Chapter 2005. However, the disdain on her had not been removed, and she was still on bail pending trial. Xianxia was a little worried. If the news were to spread, the media would not know how to publicize this matter. Those unscrupulous reporters, who knew how to distort the story. What about Mu Yaja? He had clearly promised to fly to Sea City together, but for some reason, he did not show up. This was probably Song Enya's doing. What a good plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain. The more she thought about it, the more terrified she became. After all, Song Enya had long wanted to get rid of her. Xianxia had always been wary of her, but she did not expect her to be so ruthless. Even though they could not be sure if Song Enya was the one behind all this, she was still the prime suspect. Other than her, she could not think of a second person. Still, what was the matter with that text message? She still could not think of a reasonable explanation. Could it be that someone had hacked Qin Zhou's phone IP and sent the text message, then quickly erased the data? She had removed something on this level before. If it was a skilled hacker, it would be easy for them to do such a thing. Had it not been reported on the internet before? The more Xianxia thought about it, the more her head hurt. She gently knitted her brows, exhausted. She had not slept well last night, and after going through a series of events, she was exhausted. Hua Jin's heart ached when he saw her tired look. He gently caressed her face. "Xianxia, do you want to sleep for a while? You don't look good." Xianxia shook her head. "I'm not tired. I'll accompany you." She looked up at Hua Jin and smiled. "Today, thank you. If not for you, I really don't know what would have happened." "Why are you thanking me? Any man would have done the same." Hua Jin did not think much of it. He did not think that this was an earth-shattering thing. "I still have to thank you because, you got hurt because of me." Even though Hua Jin appeared nonchalant about it, she still felt very guilty. "If you say that again, I'll get angry." After a pause, Hua Jin smiled gently. "If I had been with you, this wouldn't have happened. I was careless and didn't expect her to have a weapon. Didn't you think that you might die?" When Hua Jin heard this, he was stunned for a moment, but then he said mockingly, "I'm not even afraid of living, why would I be afraid of death?" He had experienced a life that was crueler than death. Death was nothing to be afraid of. What do you mean? Nothing. Hua Jin shook his head and didn't say anything else. Sure, why are you so stupid? Who would ask you to go to the rooftop in the middle of the night? It's obviously a trap. I can't believe you went there so eagerly. I didn't think that much. Big-chested but brainless. When Xianxia heard this, she immediately became angry. What did you say? Hua Jin was amused by her and laughed out loud. Nothing. I was just joking. What? It's not funny at all. Xianxia sulked. Hua Jin immediately begged for mercy. Okay, don't be angry. I said the wrong thing. There was a moment of silence in the ward. Only the beeping sound of the machine could be heard. Xianxia suddenly broke the silence and asked carefully, "Actually, what you told me, about your background, you weren't joking with me, right?" Chapter 2006. Xianxia suddenly asked the question that was bothering her as she looked at him quizzically. Hua Jin was stunned. In an instant, his face turned ashen. Xianxia was at a loss for what to do when she saw his face turn ugly. She did not know what she had said that had stabbed him. It's probably because you're too close to me and something bad will happen. Hua Jin lowered his eyelashes in disappointment. He bit his lip and said, "Maybe. I'm too selfish and didn't care about this. But..." He looked up and said seriously, "Do you know? I like being with you." A look of surprise appeared in Xianxia's eyes. Don't misunderstand. I don't mean anything else. I said that I like being with you because you give me the warmth of a family. As Hua Jin spoke, he smiled slightly, but his tone was extremely lonely. I'm very greedy for this warmth because this warmth is unprecedented, so, Hua Jin, there was a hint of bitterness in Hua Jin's smile as he said seriously, maybe you should keep a distance from me. At least, before I cut ties with that woman. That woman? Could that woman be the sugar daddy behind Hua Jin that Mu she had mentioned to her before? Hua Jin glanced at Xianxia and saw through her thoughts. He was extremely meticulous, more so than ordinary men. Hence, he quickly realized what Xianxia was suspecting. I know that there are too many rumors about me in the industry. Some are groundless, but some are the truth. Xianxia looked at him with a deep gaze. The background I told you before is all real. It's not a joke, but I'm afraid that if you know about my past, you'll think that I'm dirty. Hua Jin shrunk his shoulders helplessly. His bloodless lips were dry and cracked like the dry earth. How can that be? Xianxia smiled. I don't think you're dirty. The past is the past, who doesn't have a past? Really? Hua Jin's eyes shone with surprise and joy. In an instant, there was a hint of anger on his face. You really won't find me dirty? Yes. Hua Jin scrutinized her expression. Seeing the sincerity and seriousness in her eyes, he sighed. If you're willing to listen, I'll tell you. All right. The truth was that Hua Jin's father had sold him to a man with an extraordinary background when he was at his wit's end. This man was very powerful and famous in the financial circle. He had invested in many fields, such as the internet, entertainment media, real estate. The entertainment company he controlled was only a small part of his business. The man took a fancy to him and proposed to use him to pay off the debt. Hua Jin's father agreed. The next few years were ones that Hua Jin could not bear to look back on. From being young and ignorant to later being cold and sophisticated, it was all thanks to this man. He still remembered that one time, a man took him to attend a huge private banquet. The host of the banquet had booked an entire island for half a month of revelry. Young models, drugs, and playing very fiercely. That man threw him into the circle and said that he could play with him however he wanted. During that half a month, he was ravaged beyond recognition. Chapter 2007. It was said that she died on the spot because of her drug addiction. That banquet was filled with extravagance. It was like the wine pools and meat forests of ancient times. Depth bombs, Russian roulette, there was nothing that could not be done. He watched helplessly as a group of women wearing blindfolds formed a circle with their butts sticking out. When the music started, they let the men play with them. Whoever vented first had to drink as punishment. As for the so-called depth bombs, it was even more unbearable to watch. Of course, in their circle, it was not worth mentioning to play with a few young models. It was something that could be settled with a little money. Some of the young models did not know that they played so hard. They regretted it as soon as they stepped in. But since they were here, there was no reason to retreat. They forced themselves on her and did it forcefully. After that banquet, Hua Jin became addicted to drugs. He spent a few months recuperating. The man did not care about him. In order to make a living, he had to be sent to the bar. Later, the man signed a contract with him and packaged him. He was determined to turn him into a costume idol. Probably because he saw him as a money tree, or maybe because he was tired of him, the man did not touch him after that. Half a year after his debut, he met the woman called Xiaoya. In fact, Hua Jin did not know the full name of this woman. He only knew that she had an extraordinary background. He heard that she was related to the Zhengtan. Her family was prominent and the group behind her could be said to be an astonishingly powerful family. The appearance of this woman, in a sense, saved him from the dark circle. However, in another sense, he was trapped in a cage like a canary and could not be coveted by anyone. She liked him very much. Hua Jin thought that it was probably his beautiful appearance that attracted her. Or maybe it was his sweet words that made her addicted. Until now, any female star who got close to him or wanted to use his fame to create hype had been banned by her. To her, banning was just a matter of a sentence. But for those female celebrities, it was apocalyptic. From then on, any female star who saw him would avoid him as if he was a monster. Even though they were on the same set, she couldn't wait to be separated from him by a galaxy. Hua Jin glanced at her cautiously and gave a self-deprecating laugh. Isn't it funny? I'm like a commodity. To put it bluntly, even I feel that my body is extremely dirty. Don't say that. When Xianxia heard this, her mood was extremely complicated. Heartache, shock, heartache, all sorts of emotions welled up in his heart. It turned out that what he said that day was not a joke at all. How he had opened his wound and shown it to her. How he had smiled lightly and said, "I was just joking with you. Will you hate me?" Hua Jin was terrified. He didn't want to say these things. These scars had been compressed for many years and had long festered. But he just wanted to let her know that he was willing to open up his past and show it to her. However, what he was even more afraid of was that after saying all this, what he was met with was her avoidance and avoidance. Xianxia shook her head. She sympathized with him and her heart ached for him. But she didn't think that he was as dirty as he said. The dirtiest thing was no one's heart, wasn't it? Chapter 2008. Have you never thought of leaving this industry? Yes, I have. Hua Jin said honestly. Then why? I can't escape. Hua Jin lowered his head and closed his eyes. He seemed to be disappointed and helpless. I can't escape, how can that be? Xianxia did not think so. She stared at Hua Jin's lonely expression and felt sorry for him. She wanted to say something, but Hua Jin cut her off. Xianxia, you don't understand this industry at all. It's materialistic and indulgent. Since ancient times, people in our line of work have been called entertainers and have always been reduced to playthings in the hands of the rich and powerful. Otherwise, don't step into this industry. Once you step into it, you can only climb up and there's no way out. That is, unless you have a very powerful financial backer behind you to protect you. But you're different. Acting is your pastime. You don't make a living out of it. Moreover, you have the Mu group behind you. You don't have to worry about anyone attacking you. Hua Jin suddenly smiled, but his eyes were full of bitterness. Sure, do you know how many people I've offended all these years? If I leave this protection, I'll definitely be skinned alive by those people. Originally, I wasn't afraid. But now, I want to survive. Unspoken was even more confused. From Hua Jin's explanation, Unspoken could vaguely sense that the backer behind him was very powerful. She also realized that Hua Jin was now in a dangerous situation and was in a dilemma. Other than his backer, no one could protect him. Hua Jin said casually, "Actually, I'm tired of the entertainment industry. I'm tired of the hypocrisy and scheming. I'm also tired of constantly changing my mask to cater to anyone. That's why I'm so envious of you." Unspoken frowned and looked at him. "Do you want to leave the entertainment industry?" "Huh. If you want to leave, I'll think of a way." Hua Jin was stunned. "You'll think of a way?" "Yes. I will think of a way to protect you." Hua Jin was stunned for a long time. Suddenly, he shook his head and said helplessly, Sure, don't joke around. Don't make trouble for yourself. I've never thought of it as a problem. Unspoken said seriously, "Hua Jin, if you really want to leave, I'll help you." Hua Jin gently nodded. However, he did not really believe that Unspoken had a way to get him out of this circle. However, he accepted her kind intentions. Airport. It was 6:00 in the morning when the plane landed. Last night's flight was supposed to take off at 7:00. However, due to the weather, a large number of flights were delayed, and the warning was upgraded to orange. Private jets couldn't even start flights. Generally speaking, private jets couldn't fly whenever they wanted. If they had a flight plan, they had to submit an application to the airport's air traffic control a week in advance, and the flight would take place a week later. Due to the weather and many other dangerous factors, Min Yu's emergency flight was rejected. He couldn't book a first-class ticket. Hence, a certain man who had always traveled first class had to experience life in the economy class. Min Yu suggested that if the flight took off at 2:00 in the morning, it would be at least 6:00 in the morning when it landed in Sea City. Since that was the case, he might as well wait for Unspoken's flight in the capital. Mu Yaja rejected him coldly. He was worried. Chapter 2009. The plane finally took off at 2:50 a.m. He turned on his phone and received a long text message from Qin Zhou. It was a short and concise report of what had happened. He immediately dialed Qin Zhou's number. The phone rang for a while before it was picked up. Qin Zhou's surprised voice came through the phone. "Boss." Qin Zhou sounded as if he had seen a ghost. He did not expect Mu Yaja to arrive in Sea City overnight. He thought that Mu Yaja would never come to Sea City again. "Boss, why are you in Sea City? Where is she?" She's at the hospital." "Which hospital?" Qin Zhou reported the address. Mu Yaja was about to hang up the phone when Qin Zhou suddenly said anxiously, "Boss, is it convenient for you to come over now? I'm at the police station." "What's wrong?" "Don't worry about Sure for now. She only suffered some superficial injuries. I've sent people to take care of her. However, there's a small matter here. I hope you can come over and take care of it." "Take care of it yourself." "I want to. But if I had such authority, why would I bother you?" Mu Yaja frowned and took it seriously. "What is it?" Half an hour later, Mu Yaja appeared at the police station. When Qin Zhou saw him, he immediately stood up excitedly and rushed to him. "Boss, you're here." "Yeah. Mu Yaja looked a little fatigued. He had barely closed his eyes during the entire night's journey. A normal person would not be able to take it. Even with his amazing stamina, he could not withstand this fatigue. The weariness on his face was heart-wrenching. He seemed to have never shown such a tired expression before. Qin Zhou also noticed the tiredness on his face. He was a little surprised. "Boss, you look tired. Do you want to rest for a while? Tell me, what's the matter?" Mu Yaja ignored his kindness and went straight to the point. Qin Zhou looked at Min Yu, who was standing beside him, with a complicated expression. He pursed his lips helplessly and said, "Mu Wanru is dead." Mu Wanru? Mu Yaja was stunned for a few seconds. How did she die? Qin Zhou summarized what had happened that night. Right now, the police are suspecting that Xianxia is Mu Wanru's murderer. Looking at the current situation, all sorts of evidence are against Xianxia's innocence. The evidence collected from the crime scene is also unable to prove her innocence. I've already paid bail, but based on the current situation, I'm afraid I'll be summoned by the police for interrogation at any time. Why is Mu Wanru in Sea City? Min Yu questioned. Isn't she being held captive in the hospital? I don't know. Qin Zhou looked confused. A sharp glint appeared in Mu Yaja's eyes as he asked suspiciously, "Are you sure it's him?" The body was placed in the morgue. Even though the person fell from a high altitude and the body was severely deformed, it was still recognizable. Mu Yaja ordered, "Min Yu, send someone to check the situation at the hospital." "Boss, you're saying, how can a lunatic escape from the hospital? Unless, of course, someone let her out." Mu Yaja's face turned frosty. If that was the case, it would be a lot more complicated. Given how crazy Mu Wanru was, how was it possible for her to escape from the mental hospital without a clear mind? Chapter 2010. He did not suspect that Mu Wanru was pretending to be crazy. No one could be that good at acting. Moreover, even if she was pretending to be crazy, she did not have the ability to investigate Xianxia's every move. She even knew her schedule like the back of her hand. The most difficult problem now is that the police may summon Xianxia at any time. She may also face a 24-hour interrogation. Didn't you pay the bail money? It's useless. Mu Yaja frowned. It's useless? I've used all the power and connections I can think of, but I don't know why. It's as if they're determined to go against Xianxia. Before we get any evidence, Xianxia is still listed as a suspect. How's the autopsy? Before Qin Zhou could answer, a police officer with the rank of a sergeant suddenly walked out of the interrogation room. Behind him were the hotel manager and a few waiters. He glanced at Mu Yaja and his gaze tightened. Seeing that he was talking to Qin Zhou, he questioned sternly, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Min Yu, who was standing beside him, saw that he was not friendly and stepped forward to reprimand him. "Who are you?" Mu Yaja stopped him. Min Yu understood what he meant and immediately stepped back. The police officer glanced at Min Yu and snorted. "Don't think that you can be so presumptuous here just because you have some power. This is a serious place, so please correct your attitude and don't show off your strength." He obviously did not know the identity of the man in front of him. If he did, he probably would not be so arrogant. The police officers in the police station who had some experience all spoke with a bit of an accent. When they spoke, they pretended to be pretentious and deliberately mystifying. Mu Yaja said slowly, "I'm Xianxia's husband." "Oh. That's great. You should cooperate with us and take a statement." Then, the police officer pointed at Qin Zhou and asked, "Where is Xianxia? Tell her to come to the police station quickly. We need to ask her some questions." Qin Zhou frowned, somewhat displeased with his attitude. Mu Yaja continued, "If you have any questions, you can ask me directly." The police officer looked him up and down, then pointed to the interrogation room and ordered, "Go sit there first." Min Yu thought to himself, this officer is really arrogant and unreasonable. I wonder who gave him the right to do so. Aren't you afraid of offending people with your words? While he was complaining, Mu Yaja had already strode into the interrogation room. He wanted to follow, but was stopped by the police officer. Wait here. As he spoke, the police officer handed over a few tasks and entered the interrogation room. The two men sat facing each other. Mu Yaja sat elegantly on the chair with his legs slightly crossed. His aura was like that of an emperor, which made the already small interrogation room seem even more cramped. What's his name? I asked you what your name is. Mu Yaja glanced at him. Mu Yaja. The police officer asked as he registered, what's your relationship with the suspect? Suspect? Mu Yaja's cold and indifferent eyes slowly narrowed, emitting a dangerous glint. The suspect is Yun Shishir. What's your relationship with her? She's not guilty. The police officer was stunned. Chapter 2011. She killed someone. Did you see it with your own eyes? No. Then why did you convict her? She hasn't been convicted yet. She's just a suspect on bail. The police officer spoke again, whether or not she killed someone, whether or not she's guilty, it's not up to you to decide. She's already been released on bail. According to the rules and regulations of the police station, suspects who have been released on bail have to be summoned by the police at any time. Rules and regulations were rules. However, there was no such thing as being released on bail 1 second and being summoned to the police station the next second for interrogation. Could it be that someone was making things difficult for her? Mu Yaja sneered. You're talking to me about rules and regulations? Rules and regulations are rules. No one can defy them. You're a police officer. Who gave you such authority? The police officer looked up at him and warned, Mr. Mu, the law is strict. Please cooperate with the investigation. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a sneer. His gaze fell on the police officer as he casually remarked, what a good example of the authority of the law. He suddenly lowered his gaze and tugged at his tie gently. He then unbuttoned his sleeves. The evil smile on his lips inexplicably made people feel awe. The police officer looked at him quietly, only to see him suddenly stand up straight, stride forward, and slowly walk in front of him. He raised his leg and kicked the table in front of him. He was insufferably arrogant and had no scruples about his status. The table quickly fell towards the police officer. The police officer was caught off guard and was not prepared at all. He fell to the ground together with the table. His leg was crushed by the table and he grimaced in pain. The table in the interrogation room was very heavy. An ordinary man would not be able to withstand it when it was on top of a person. Mu Yaja's face was gloomy. His deep black eyes flashed with a sharp glint. He landed on the person on the ground and put his hands in his trouser pockets. He lifted his leg and suddenly stepped on the table. Under the force, the table fell heavily on his body. Ah! The police officer screamed in pain. He felt that his legs were about to break under this kick. Who allowed you to call my wife a suspect? Who gave you such a right? You. The police officer widened his eyes in shock. It was hard to imagine that this man dared to be so presumptuous in the police station. You're assaulting a police officer. Where is the law? Law? Mu Yaja looked down at him coldly. I don't have much patience, so listen carefully. Mu Yaja said coldly, I was the one who killed him. If you have the ability, you can deal with me. Several police officers outside the door heard the commotion and immediately rushed in. When they saw the situation, they were shocked. Qin Zhou and Min Yu also rushed over. They were shocked when they saw the soul-stirring scene. She didn't know what had made her boss so angry that he actually started a fight in the police station. It had never happened before. Bastard! What are you trying to do? What kind of place is this? How dare you rebel? When a police officer saw this, he immediately rushed forward to take him down. Wuxia casually grabbed him and restrained him. How many skills could the people in the police station have, but Wuxia was different. He had trained in the military. Every move he made was from actual combat. These guys could not compare to him. Chapter 2012. About 10 minutes later. In the bureau chief's office. The old bureau chief carefully poured tea and looked at the cold-looking man sitting on the sofa. He was on tenterhooks, fearing that he might have missed something. It's a misunderstanding, it's really a misunderstanding. My subordinates didn't do their job properly and caused you to be alarmed. I'm really ashamed. No one would believe that the young mistress of the Mu family would sacrifice her bright future for the sake of killing someone who had nothing to do with it. This obviously doesn't make sense. Wuxia snorted coldly and ignored the tea that the bureau chief offered him. He said coldly, "Investigate your subordinates properly. In this case, he's like a mad dog biting onto an innocent person. It's obvious that he has received some kind of favor." Yes, I'll definitely investigate this thoroughly. However, I hope you won't take this matter to heart, Chairman Mu. You're such a big shot and magnanimous person. You can't make things difficult for me over such a small matter. If I knew it was you, I wouldn't have dared to make things difficult for you. The office door opened. The old bureau chief thanked him profusely and invited him out. The few police officers standing outside the door looked at each other and then at the old bureau chief, who was nodding and bowing humbly. They were all frightened. It turned out that this man had such a powerful background that the old bureau chief could lower himself to cater to him. No wonder he had a fierce and threatening aura. It seemed that he was not a simple person. This time, they were blind and had offended someone they shouldn't have. When the old bureau chief saw them, he glared at them fiercely. He turned his head and put on a fawning look again. He rubbed his hands and asked carefully, "Chairman Mu, do you want to stay for a while longer?" "No, I have something to do." Of course. Chairman Mu, you're a busy man. I'm really sorry to have caused you trouble in the midst of your busy schedule. Let me see you out. Forget it. Wuxia was annoyed when he saw him. He turned around and called Min Yu and Qin Zhou to leave the police station. Finally, the old director wiped the cold sweat on his forehead with a handkerchief and turned around, regaining his dignified appearance. "Who gave you the guts to interrogate this high lord?" A loud shout shook the entire room. Everyone looked at each other and lowered their heads guiltily. "Who is in charge of this case? Stand out." A new police officer stepped forward obediently. "Do you know who you have offended? Didn't you check his background before the interrogation?" I was just following orders." "On whose orders?" "Sheriff Wu." The old bureau chief narrowed his eyes. "Where is he?" "His leg was injured. He was sent to the hospital." "Tell him to look for me later. I have something to ask him." "Understood." In the car. With a frosty expression, Wuxia ordered his assistant, "Send someone to the Song's residence to restrain Song Enya. After returning to the capital, investigate the ins and outs of this matter." "Yes, I understand." Min Yu observed his expression and asked, "Boss, do you suspect, other than the Songs, no one else in the capital has such great capabilities? Even if there is, they don't have the motive." He thought about it. Chapter 2013. Come to think of it, her so-called suicide was just to divert his attention. How ruthless. A woman's heart was the most vicious. She was the embodiment of it all. She actually used suicide as a way to attract his attention. Most women would at most be ruthless to others. However, she could even do it to herself. It was truly chilling. Min Yu immediately sent people to the hospital and the Song family to capture Song Enya's every move and await her punishment. By the time they reached the hospital, the sky was already slightly cold. Mu Yaja walked to the door of the ward. As soon as he pushed it open, he saw Yunshishir lying by the bed, fast asleep. However, even though she was asleep, her hands were still tightly clasped with Hua Jin's. Hua Jin's eyes were originally closed when he was suddenly awakened by Mu Yaja's aggressive movements. He opened his eyes abruptly and saw a tall and handsome man with black hair in a suit appear at the door of the ward. Mu Yaja walked into the ward. His sharp gaze suddenly fell on Yunshishir and Hua Jin's tightly clasped hands. His gaze suddenly deepened. It was obvious that he was displeased by their intimacy. Yunshishir, however, did not notice it at all. Perhaps she was really tired, so her pajamas were so deep that she did not wake up even though there was a huge commotion. Mu Yaja walked over. Every step he took was mixed with a thunderous aura. Hua Jin could not help but be intimidated by his cold aura. While he was stunned, he saw him standing by the bed with his gaze still fixed on their tightly clasped hands. His gaze was sharp. Hua Jin was shocked by his aura and broke out in a cold sweat. "You! What are you doing? Let go." It was just 2 words, but his tone was commanding and did not allow for any objection. Not only did Hua Jin not let go, but he also tightened his grip on her hand. This man's vicious aura was too terrifying. He was like a lion protecting its territory, aggressive and aggressive. "What are you doing?" Mu Yaja walked over and grabbed his hand, forcefully pulling it away from Yunshishir's. Hua Jin cried out in pain. The strength in his hands was so terrifying that he couldn't struggle at all. In the next second, he saw him trying to pick up Yunshishir. In his panic, he shouted, "Don't touch her." He subconsciously reached out to stop her. Mu Yaja didn't even look at him as he waved his hand away. Scram! Hua Jin was flung to the side. In his violent movements, he accidentally pulled on his wound. His face turned pale from the pain. He clenched his teeth and sucked in a breath of cold air. So painful. The wound had just been stitched up, so it was still very fragile. Mu Yaja waved his hand roughly, but he could clearly feel the wound tearing open. Soon, there was a smear of dark red blood on the gauze, which kept seeping out. Yunshishir was startled awake by the argument between the two. She looked up and saw Hua Jin covering his wound, frowning as he fell to the side. She immediately went forward to support him. Just as she got up, she realized that there was a man with a terrifying aura standing beside her. She turned around and saw that it was him. "Why? Why is it you?" Mu Yaja asked coldly, "Why can't it be me?" Yunshishir looked deeply into his cold eyes, and her tone instantly turned cold. "What are you doing here?" Those 5 cold words were extremely distant and indifferent. When she thought of him breaking the contract, she was furious. Mu Yaja was slightly angered by those 5 cold words. Chapter 2014. His voice was cold, and the chill seeped into her bones, making her shudder. Yunshishir didn't back off. Instead, she looked up and stared back at him coldly. Without any hesitation, she said aggressively, "Why should I want you to come?" Mu Yaja looked at her with a gloomy gaze. "Did I disturb you when I came?" As he said that, his gaze fell on Hua Jin with deep meaning. Thinking about how intimately the two of them were when he pushed the door open and walked in, he felt an inexplicable anger and frustration. He hated it when she was with other men. Moreover, they were holding hands so intimately. She stayed by the bed, and even though they were asleep, their hands were still tightly intertwined. How could he not be angry? The disgust and suspicion in his eyes pierced Yunshishir's heart. At that moment, the wound that had already healed started to bleed again. What was he disgusted with? Disgusted with Hua Jin? Then, what was he suspecting? Was he suspecting that she and Hua Jin would be having an affair when he wasn't around? What did he mean by, "Did I disturb you?" Didn't this man sometimes feel that his words were cruel and hurtful? Xianxia was so angry that she was trembling all over. In the end, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. She stood up abruptly and pushed him out of the door, ignoring the abrasions on her hands. Get lost. Wuxia was caught off guard and was pushed hard by her, causing him to stumble backward. When he realized what she had said, he looked up in disbelief and stared at her coldly. However, he sneered angrily. Get lost? Xianxia met his gaze fearlessly, but her voice was chilly. Yes, get lost. I don't want to see you. Qin Zhou and Min Yu rushed over but didn't expect to see this scene. Qin Zhou and Min Yu looked at each other as they stared at each other. Clearly, they did not expect such a situation. Seeing that he was pushed away, the man deeply frowned, deep handsome eyes fell on her face, there was scrutiny, there was anger. What do you mean? Wuxia's heart was filled with anger. He grabbed her hand tightly and his chest was filled with jealousy. You dare to chase me away for a man? His hands were extremely strong. Xianxia was hurt by him all of a sudden. She bit her lip in pain and looked at him with teary eyes, but there was a hint of wanting to say something. What did she mean by chasing him away for a man? Was that the reason? It was simply indescribable. This man's ability to twist people's words was amazing. When Hua Jin saw this, he was also furious. He sat up abruptly and didn't care about the wound on his upper abdomen. He glared at Wuxia and complained, Wuxia. If you're still a man, please don't treat her so roughly. Wuxia glanced at him coldly from the corner of his eye. You have no right to speak here. Why not? Hua Jin didn't know where he got the courage from. His eyes were red as he spoke up for Xianxia. Do you know that Xianxia almost lost her life last night? Wuxia's pupils contracted as he stared at him suspiciously. What do you mean? Hua Jin. Chapter 2015. Xianxia gritted her teeth and stopped him. Hua Jin didn't listen to her and continued, as her man, you should protect her. Trust her. But you can't even protect her. What right do you have to be her man? What right do you have to be angry at her? Xianxia is a good girl. If you don't cherish her, please don't trample on her. Hua Jin. Stop talking. Xianxia swatted his hand away, but her heart couldn't help but turn cold. Qin Zhou heard this and immediately went forward. Boss, calm down. There's nothing that can't be explained clearly. There's no need to be so angry. Hua Jin gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. He sneered and said, Wuxia, I know that you have great power and influence. As the business tycoon in Beijing, the Mu family is a big business and has a deep-rooted position. If I offend you, you can ban me with just one word. But do you think I'm afraid of you? I'll look down on you instead. If you can't even protect the woman you love, what's the point of having great power and influence? She almost lost her life tonight. Wuxia regained his composure and said coldly, what do you mean by that? I don't know. I only know that last night, Xianxia was tricked by a text message to go to the rooftop on the 28th floor. In the end, a crazy woman came out of nowhere and wanted to kill her. Do you know that the woman dragged her down from the 28th floor? If it weren't for Xianxia's quick reflexes to grab hold of the pipe hanging outside the building, perhaps what you're seeing now is just a cold corpse. Wuxia was slightly stunned. Perhaps what you're seeing now is just a cold corpse. These words really shocked him. Xianxia held her hand that was hurting from his grip and stood aside. She turned her face away and didn't make a sound, but her face was already wet with tears. She had never thought of complaining about Wuxia breaking his promise last night. But when she saw the suspicion in his eyes, her heart turned cold. She was frightened. After all, she was a woman. When she saw him, she hoped that he would hold her in his arms and comfort her gently. But not only did that not happen, he even doubted her. Could it be that she still needed to painstakingly explain to him? There's no need for that. If they trusted him, why would they doubt him? If he had doubts, there was no need to explain. He didn't trust her enough. Xianxia firmly believed in this conclusion. Is what he said true? Wuxia asked her. When he was at the police station, he didn't know about this at all. Even Qin Zhou didn't know this detail. He only knew that Xianxia was in danger, but he didn't know that she was only one step away from death. Xianxia's lips curled into a cold smirk as she slowly looked at him and casually asked, "Does it matter to you whether it's true or not? How could it not be important? He had almost lost her. How could it not be important?" Wuxia knew that the woman in front of him was angry with him. It was probably because he didn't attend the award ceremony with her last night. Therefore, she was angry. She was angry that he had failed to keep his promise. As he thought of this, he felt that it was reasonable for this little thing to be a little emotional. Chapter 2016. Thus, he tugged on her sleeve and lowered his noble head. His pair of clear and cold eyes floated with a hint of apology, as if he was taking a step back. He lowered his voice and said, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have stood you up. I shouldn't have put you in such a dangerous situation. Do you think I need your apology?" If it was any other day, this little woman would definitely be amused by his helpless appearance and laugh. However, Xianxia was not moved at all when she heard his apology. In fact, the coldness in her eyes was so gloomy that it was about to stab him. Is an apology enough? Is an apology enough to make up for everything? Wuxia asked in a low voice, "What do you want?" "What do I want?" Xianxia stared at him with widened eyes. She was so angry that she laughed. "Wuxia, why do you have to be so arrogant even when you're apologizing?" Wuxia was speechless for a moment. This woman was so eloquent. He was not good at expressing himself, let alone sweet-talking her. Hence, he could not refute her. He clearly did not mean it that way. So, did she have to twist his words so much? Wuxia was at a loss for words. Xianxia sized him up. Her eyes regained their calm as she said coldly, "Attending the film festival with me is probably not as important as Xianxia, right?" He did not know if she was deliberately trying to provoke him or if she was really trying to guess him. However, just as he was about to deny it, Wuxia suddenly reacted to her words and was stunned. How did she know that he had stood her up because of Xianxia? For a moment, his eyes were filled with doubts. "What do you mean? What do you mean?" "I mean it literally. Don't you understand?" How did she know? How did she know about Xianxia? Wuxia suddenly realized something. Could it be that Xianxia had told her, or was she deliberately using this matter to provoke her? D****. Xianxia sneered and said expressionlessly, "You didn't pick up the phone because you were afraid that I would be angry if I found out, right?" Wuxia was silent for a long time before he admitted bluntly, "Yes." Xianxia did not know whether to laugh or cry at his affirmation. She sucked in a deep breath of cold air as her eyes turned moist. He clearly knew that she would be angry if she heard about this matter. However, he still went to the film festival without hesitation. She left him behind to accompany Xianxia. For the time being, she would not speculate on the reason behind it. Was it like what Xianxia had said or was there another reason? The fact that he had abandoned his promise with her and went to Xianxia's side was an undeniable fact. How ridiculous. Xianxia gritted her teeth and suppressed the bitterness in her heart. Every word she uttered was shaky. "If you're really afraid that I'll be angry, then why did you do it? You clearly know how much I hate her. But one phone call from her, and you still went. You went without a care for anything. You even cancelled your promise with me and didn't even give me a reply. I was so worried that something had happened to you. In the end, I didn't expect you to break our promise because of Song Enya. What am I? Muyaja, what am I? Don't tell me you don't care about your agreement with me at all? No. Then what is it? Tell me. Answer me. She was so aggressive that he had no way to retreat. Chapter 2017. Huh. Yunshursher burst out laughing. Am I being unreasonable? Oh, so that's how it is. How did you find out about this? Muyaja asked in a deep voice. Yunshursher chuckled when she heard that. So, you're still trying to hide it from me. It's not what you think. A look of fatigue appeared in Muyaja's eyes. He shut them tightly and said weakly, don't let your imagination run wild. Since you've already done it, why are you afraid that I'll let my imagination run wild? What did I do? Muyaja felt that she was a little unreasonable. He clearly did not do anything, yet he was being questioned like this. He really felt that he could not defend himself. Yunshursher said coldly, the second before I registered, Song Enya called and flaunted her power to me. What is this? Is this a provocation? Now, you're acting all innocent. Who are you trying to put on an act for? Song Enya called me? Muyaja's brows sank. Without thinking, he knew that Song Enya had called Yunshursher and said something nasty. She was probably using this opportunity to drive a wedge between them. However, he really did not expect this. He thought that Song Enya had really slit her wrist and went to the hospital to visit her out of goodwill. He did not expect that she had deliberately hurt herself to gain his sympathy and pity. Her motive was terrible. However, she said that he was putting on an act. Muyaja's face sank at once. No one had ever dared to say such things in front of him. She was the first. Back then, Jiang Qimeng had repeatedly pleaded with him, so he felt a little sorry for Song Enya. He thought that the latter was really seeking death, so he pushed back his flight in the afternoon and rushed to the hospital to take a look before flying directly to Sea City. Back then, when he called Qin Zhou and instructed him to fly to Sea City with Yunshursher, it was to ensure her safety. However, Qin Zhou misunderstood him. He thought that he was not going, so he told Yunshursher the same thing. But in reality, it wasn't that he wasn't going. He had merely pushed back his flight and planned to book a flight to Sea City immediately after visiting his niece. However, there were two accidents. One exception was Song Enya. The other one was that the plane tickets had been booked and the next flight was at 7 p.m. However, he knew that the flight would be delayed, so there was no need for him to make the trip. Minyu also tried to persuade him. Perhaps, by the time he arrived, it would already be early in the morning. So, there was no point in going to Sea City. He missed her and was afraid that she would be disappointed, so he still insisted on flying over. The reason why he didn't pick up her call was because he was in a hurry to go to the hospital and didn't bring his phone with him. When he returned to the company and saw the missed calls, he didn't know how to explain it, so he didn't reply immediately. He didn't know how to lie, he didn't know how to flatter, and he didn't know how to smooth things over. However, if he were to tell the truth directly over the phone, he felt that it was inappropriate. He was afraid that she would let her imagination run wild and suspect something. She was extremely sensitive and would easily let her imagination run wild. He was afraid that she would think too much, so he didn't pick up the call. Hence, he thought that he might as well not say anything over the phone. If she asked about it when they arrived in Sea City, he could explain it clearly in person. What happened next, though? Chapter 2018. Little did he know that right after he left the hospital, Song Enya had made a provocative call to Yunshursher in high spirits. He did not know what she had said over the phone, but it was nothing more than that to sow discord between them. As for what happened later, he did not have the ability to predict the future, so he could not foresee anything that would happen in the next second. How could he have imagined that Song Enya would be so ruthless as to go all out to get rid of Yunshursher? Since she dared to mess around right under his nose, he would not be soft-hearted. Song Enya's side was easy to deal with. However, this woman used this to stop him. What could happen between him and Song Enya? Song Enya was related to him by blood. She was his cousin. According to seniority, she was his niece. He had to be crazy to have any thoughts about Song Enya. Before Unspoken appeared, he had been getting along with her rather harmoniously. However, some things that happened later made him extremely disappointed in Song Enya. Hence, they gradually drifted apart. However, it was impossible for him to say that he did not have any feelings for a sister that he had doted on since she was young. Compared to more than 10 years of friendship, she was his most beloved sister. If it were not for Song Enya, he would not have been able to walk out of the trauma of losing his mother. He still had to care about this bit of friendship. He was a cold man to the core, but most of the time, he was not so heartless. However, it was precisely this compassion that was used by the other party. He admitted defeat and felt that he was a good-for-nothing to have been set up in such a way. He was really a good-for-nothing. He was indignant, helpless, and a little angry. The last bit of affection he had for Song Enya was completely gone. However, he was indignant that she would judge him like this. Do you really understand the meaning of putting yourself in someone else's shoes? Can you give me a reasonable explanation? She's in the hospital. Wuxia forced himself to calm down and replied calmly, her mother knelt down and begged me to see her. What happened to her? She cut her wrist. Cut her wrist? Unspoken smiled. Do you believe her? Wuxia was silent for a moment. So, you broke your promise with me for Song Enya. Wuxia was completely speechless. Even a few words of explanation seemed powerless. He suddenly turned around and furrowed his brows tiredly. He looked at her deeply and said nothing as he strode out of the ward. Boss, Chairman Mu. Qin Zhou and Min Yu looked at each other as they watched him leave. Min Yu patted Qin Zhou's shoulder gently and instructed, I'll go check on the boss first. I'll leave young madam to you. Take good care of her. Okay. Min Yu immediately chased after Wuxia and left. Unspoken watched as Wuxia left. As if she had lost all her strength, she fell on the bed in a daze. Her eyes were blank and her shoulders drooped helplessly. She reached out her hands and slowly held her face as she sobbed silently. Seeing this, Qin Zhou could not bear to see her like this. As a bystander, it was difficult for him to judge who was at fault in this matter. However, at the end of the day, the two cared too much about each other and loved each other to the core. It was just that some things still needed to be worn in and could not be explained clearly. Chapter 2019. However, Huajin beat him to it. He sat beside her and hugged her shoulders gently. Don't cry, his heart ached when he saw her crying. He felt indignant on her behalf. How could there be a man as arrogant as Wuxia in this world? He was insufferably arrogant and looked down on everyone else. Huajin hugged her, not caring that such an action would affect his wound. Even though it was painful and itchy, making his scalp tingle, at this moment, compared to her tears, it seemed that all of this was not worth mentioning. He didn't like her tears. Such a pair of beautiful eyes should be more beautiful when she smiled. But now, they were red and swollen from crying. They were not beautiful at all. Huajin said half-jokingly, half-seriously, Sure, don't cry. If you keep crying, I'll cry too. Before he could finish his sentence, a line of warm tears rolled down from his eyes. Unspoken remained motionless. She held her face as if she couldn't hear any of his comforting words. She couldn't stop her tears and they fell down in streams. Huajin didn't know how to comfort her. He could only hold her helplessly and pull her into his arms. He allowed her hot tears to burn his chest, in the car. Min Yu sat carefully at the side. Wuxia propped up his chin with one hand as he looked coldly out of the window. Even though he was quiet and did not say a word, his domineering aura made the atmosphere in the car taut like a bowstring, ready to explode at any moment. Actually, Minyu really wanted to ask what his plan was. Was he going to return to the capital immediately or stay in Sea City for a few days? Looking at Yun Shishir's condition and Hua Jin's injury, he was afraid that they wouldn't be able to leave in a day or two. However, there were some things that he had to deal with in the capital. Also, Minyu also felt that if his boss left without saying a word, young madam would be sad. Women were the most delicate and sensitive. A woman like young madam was very easy to coax. With a few sweet words, she would probably not be so stubborn. Although he didn't have a wife, he had dated 1 or 2 women. It was hard to guess a woman's thoughts, but it was easy to coax her. Someone like young madam was not particularly willful and unruly. She was considerate and gentle. She would lower herself to coax her a little and then stop when she was ahead. Furthermore, I don't know if I should say that. Minyu thought that if he were the young madam, he would be angry too. However, with the boss's arrogant and insufferably arrogant personality, it was rare for him to lower himself to apologize. Saying sorry was already not easy. However, when coaxing a woman, patience was the most important thing. In the end, sigh. It was a long story. Even he was anxious when he saw it. Boss, Minyu thought about it and decided to ask about it. Seeing that Mu Yaja was still looking out the window, he asked carefully, about young madam, she needs to calm down. Mu Yaja said expressionlessly, let her calm down for a while. Minyu wanted to say that women didn't need to calm down. He wasn't like a man who could quickly calm down when something happened. The more they ignored her, the more problems there would be. However, he couldn't blame his boss. His boss didn't know how to coax a woman at all. This was the problem. Chapter 2020. Is he having a cold war with me? His assistant was worried sick about this matter. Boss, you don't have the demeanor of a man in this matter. It's reasonable for young madam to be angry. Upon hearing that, Mu Yaja shot him a cold glance from the corner of his eye. He stared at the man like a predator eyeing its prey. What did you say? His cold words suppressed the indignation in his assistant's heart. He thought with teary eyes, young madam is the boss's first love. It's bad enough that he doesn't know how to coax a woman, but he's not humble enough to learn from her. Bad review. Tell me, how should I coax her? Mu Yaja asked calmly. She's in a fit of anger now. Every word she says is as sharp as a knife. That's because the boss didn't handle the matter well. You can't blame anyone. Mu Yaja's eyes turned colder as soon as he said that. The assistant obediently shut his mouth and blinked at him innocently. Are you lecturing me? No. I wouldn't dare. Someone who doesn't even have a wife has no right to say that. His assistant expressed enviously and pitifully. If I have a wife, I'll treat her like a treasure. I won't talk back to her no matter what she says. Mu Yaja closed his eyes and leaned his head gently on the pillow. I just feel helpless. I don't know what to do with her. Coax her, lie to her, hug her in your arms, and coax her gently like a child. Before he could finish his sentence, Minyu's phone suddenly rang. He apologized and picked up the call, only to hear a nervous voice from the other end. Song Enya is missing. What? His voice rose as he asked incredulously, what's going on? The person on the other end reported, there's no one in the hospital. She went missing last night, and her whereabouts are unknown. The Songs are also very anxious. They can't find her. We're sending people to investigate, but there's still no news. How is that possible? Where could she have gone? I don't know. Continue to investigate until you find her. Yes. After hanging up the phone, Mu Yaja asked suspiciously, what's missing? He vaguely heard these 2 words. Boss, we've received news that Song Enya has gone missing. She's nowhere to be found in the hospital, and the Songs are frantically searching for her. He's missing? Mu Yaja furrowed his brows, and a layer of ice formed on his face. Yes. After a pause, he continued. Although I don't have any evidence to prove it, I suspect that Song Enya has something to do with Mu Wanru's matter. I've already sent someone to the hospital to inquire about Mu Wanru. Maybe we can find out something. Mu Yaja was increasingly certain that Song Enya had gone missing due to a guilty conscience or some other unspeakable reason. However, a person would never disappear for no reason. There would always be some clues. He said, book a flight back to the capital. Then, what about young madam? Send someone to guard it. Yes. Min Yu immediately sent someone to book the flight tickets. The car sped away. On the other end, Qin Zhou was stunned when he received the news that Mu Yaja had booked a flight back to the capital. Yun Shusher's heart sank to the bottom when she learned that Mu Yaja had returned to the capital without telling her. Her manager's words woke her up. Chapter 2021. What? Her eyes widened in shock as she looked at her manager with a taut face. Song Enya had gone missing. What happened? The manager shook his head in bewilderment, clearly clueless about the matter. Nothing. Chairman Mu's assistant only mentioned it over the phone. He probably rushed back to the capital to deal with this matter. Song Enya is missing. Where could she have gone? Yun Shusher bit her lower lip, not knowing what Song Enya was up to this time. Didn't she slit her wrist? Why didn't he stay in the hospital? Why did he go missing? Shusher, don't be too upset. It's not convenient for me to say just now, but actually, you've overinterpreted Chairman Mu's words. Yun Shusher looked up. After Mu Yaja's incident, her manager had been quietly accompanying her by her side. He did not say anything and just kept comforting her. It was only when she had calmed down that he decided to make his stance clear. Yun Shusher did not understand what he was trying to say, though. Overinterpreted? From the standpoint of a bystander, he explained his stance. Actually, it's not about trust or distrust. It's just that no man will be indifferent to seeing his woman being so intimate with another man. Intimate? Yun Shusher smiled faintly, feeling a little speechless. She slowly glanced at Hua Jin, who was leaning against the hospital bed, and her face darkened. Hua Jin got injured because of me. I must stay by his side and take care of him until he recovers. Does Chairman Mu know about this, though? What he saw was only the intimacy between you and Hua Jin. He cares so much about you and is so possessive of you. How could he not let his imagination run wild? Yun Shusher kept quiet for a while, then lowered her head and fell into deep thought. Her manager smiled. Actually, Chairman Mu can be a little childish sometimes. He's very stubborn and even a little possessive when it comes to relationships. He has a strong desire to control them. Perhaps, this was related to the environment he grew up in. When he was young, he was different from other boys. From the moment he was born, he was doted on. Moreover, he was destined to be the successor of the Mu group in the future. Therefore, the Mu family cultivated him according to the path of the successor. This was why he had an extremely domineering side and was very stubborn. But what made him outstanding was that he was different from those rich kids. He was single-minded when it came to relationships, and he cared a lot about relationships. On the surface, he was cold to the bone, but in fact, there were times when his heart was very soft. No matter how bad Song Enya is, Chairman Mu still has some feelings for her. Out of consideration for you, he no longer keeps in touch with her. However, given the many years of friendship between the two families, there are some things that he has to give some face to. I heard that Song Enya's mother had knelt down and begged for mercy in front of Mr. Mu, so he had to make a trip there for her sake. Yun Shusher bit her lip. She admitted it. A large part of the reason why she was so angry with him was that he had promised to attend the award ceremony with her. Her high expectations had vanished into thin air, and he had dismissed her without a word. She felt very disappointed. Chapter 2022. But why didn't he explain anything to me? How should I explain it to you? Just explain it directly. There's no need to be so secretive. Women. Qin Zhou raised an eyebrow, shook his head, and sighed. Chairman Mu won't be hypocritical, but he's probably afraid that you'll overthink things and won't listen to his explanation. He probably wants to talk to you face to face, so he rushed to see City overnight. If I were a woman, I'd be touched to death. Yunshursher glanced at him. Sensing her suspicious gaze, Qin Zhou immediately cleared his name. Don't look at me like that. I'm innocent. I'm not on his side and have no intention of speaking up for him. But the moment he entered the ward, he was eyeing Hua Jin covetously as if he wanted to eat him up. He's a man. Have you ever seen lions fighting for territory? Yunshursher was stunned. He could even use such a metaphor. Actually, men are very territorial by nature, especially when it comes to their own private property. This can only mean that in Chairman Mu's heart, you're not to be tarnished by anyone. He cares too much about you because he doesn't want to. His concern makes him confused. Women fight for affection, so why can't men do the same? Was he jealous? Mu Yaja was actually jealous? Qin Zhou glanced at Yunshursher, who was flustered in the wind, and smiled helplessly. Why? Do you really think that he's suspicious of you? He's just jealous. Chairman Mu is actually very insecure. The more determined he is to get something, the more afraid he is of losing it. Despite Qin Zhou's words, Yunshursher did not feel relieved at all. Leaning against the bed, Hua Jin seemed to understand a little. In reality, he could tell that Mu Yaja was so angry because of jealousy. Men would be jealous, but they would not show it on their faces because of their pride. Yunshursher suddenly thought of something. What was his relationship with Song Enya in the past? Were they very close? Yes, very close. You can say that they were as close as siblings. As close as siblings. No wonder. Song Enya's strong possessiveness toward Mu Yaja was probably because she had always been pampered and protected by him. However, one day, the woman that this man loved the most was not hers. This created a huge psychological gap in her heart. Perhaps, her dependence and indulgence on Mu Yaja had caused her to develop a sibling relationship with him. Even though this feeling was very twisted and morbid, Song Enya still fell into it and refused to wake up. Their relationship is so good. There was an indescribable sourness in his heart. Even though she knew that Mu Yaja doted on Song Enya so much, it was not out of love. But he still felt jealous. Qin Zhou pondered for a moment. Yes, I don't know much about the details. I only know that Song Enya looks very similar to his mother. Mother? Yes. Qin Zhou nodded. Chapter 2023. Yunshursher nodded. He loves his mother very much and misses her very much. Yes. That's why it's hard for him to be ruthless toward his niece. She's probably taking advantage of that. He continued. He and his mother have been relying on each other in the family since he was young. Didn't the Mu group name a property some time ago? Yun Shan Shi Yi, where Yun and Shi come from your name, while Shan and Yi are probably named to commemorate Jianghu Shan. Yunshursher reacted abruptly. Yun Shan Shi Yi, Yun Shan Shi Yi. So that was the meaning behind the name. Her manager casually said, You and Jianghu Shan are probably the two most important women in Mr. Mu's heart and even in his life. Is that true? Yes. Yun Shan Shi Yi means a lot to Mr. Mu. The fact that he named it after you is enough to show how important you are to him. Mr. Mu has never been good with words and doesn't know how to sweet-talk you, but his feelings for you have always been there. Yunshursher was stunned. The most important woman in his life, this, however, shook her heart. Suddenly, she did not hate him as much as before. Her manager continued. Song Enya's mother, Jianghu, married Song Zhenghua and raised a son and 2 daughters. Even so, she doesn't have much status in the Song family. Song Enya, on the other hand, has been spoiled by Song Zhenghua. She's very unruly, and I don't like her. I always feel that she's too much for being spoiled. Unspoken was speechless. Song Enya is at most the daughter of a mayor. She always thinks of herself as a princess. The Song family isn't that simple, Qin Zhou added. Do you know the identity of Song Enya's grandfather? He asked, pretending to be mysterious. I know a little. He seems to be someone with a lot of power. He explained, the Song family's power can't be underestimated at all. Song Enya's grandfather was one of the country's founding fathers and had a great reputation. Although he was getting on in years, the Song family's status was still there. After so many years, their power had long been deeply rooted, and they had close ties with many big families. The reason why Song Enya can't do anything to you is that her family is wary of Chairman Mu. But without the protection of Chairman Mu, I can crush you with one finger. It was so terrifying. Hua Jin frowned. He seemed to have some impression of the Song family. He had heard Xiaoya mention the Song family before. It seemed that her family had a close relationship with the Songs, and she was quite familiar with Song Enya. Qin Zhou said, the interests involved in the Song family and the Mu family are far more complicated than you think. Because of you, Chairman Mu and the Song family fell out very badly. Because of this, the entire Mu family was quite dissatisfied. This was also one of the reasons why the Mu family did not approve of you. But with Chairman Mu around, those people can't do anything to you. Thank you, Qin Zhou. I know. Maybe I did go a little overboard with what I said to him earlier. I'm not saying that you went overboard. I'm just saying that you shouldn't read too much into Chairman Mu's words. He can be very stubborn at times. He may not be as meticulous as you when it comes to matters of the heart, but everyone can see his feelings for you. Unspoken nodded. Chapter 2024. Qin Zhou said coldly, Hua Jin, didn't I remind you not to get into an argument with President Mu? How dare you say those things in front of him? Be careful, you can't even protect yourself. Hua Jin bit his lip and said, I'm not afraid that he will do anything to me. I'm just worried that he will not treat Shursher well. Alright, both of you. Don't let your imagination run wild. Hua Jin, you stay in the hospital and rest well. Shursher will come back to the capital with me. No, I want to stay in the hospital and take care of Hua Jin. I will arrange for someone to take care of Hua Jin. Unspoken was still stubborn. You may not be considerate enough to arrange for someone to take care of him. I will take care of Hua Jin. Qin Zhou sighed helplessly. All right. When Hua Jin recovers, let's go back to the capital together. Unspoken's cell phone was broken. The police took it back as evidence, but it was difficult to repair. Hence, Qin Zhou spent some effort to get her a new cell phone. She called Yu and told him that something had happened in Sea City and that she would be back a few days later. Yu was very worried and asked her what happened. Unspoken was afraid that he would be worried, so she said that something had happened at work and that she needed to stay in Sea City for a few more days. She hung up the phone. Yu's face turned cold. Mommy was lying again. She must be afraid that he would be worried, so she lied to him. In fact, the next day after Mu Wanru's incident, the media reported that someone had committed suicide by jumping off a building at the hotel. Yu had been following the film festival closely. When he saw the news, he immediately realized that his mother was staying at the hotel. After some investigation, Yu also found out that the person who had committed suicide was Mu Wanru. Why was Mu Wanru in Sea City? Wasn't she locked up in a mental hospital? What on earth had happened to her? Yu was very sensitive and immediately connected her to her mommy. He made many calls, but no one picked up. She called her father, but Mu Yaja's phone was turned off because he was on the plane. It was not until Yun Shishir's phone call that the little boy was convinced that his mommy probably had something to do with this matter. As for this case, the Mu family sent someone to handle it. Naturally, the suspicion on Yun Shishir was dismissed. This piece of news only appeared for a short period of time before it was quickly replaced by other news. Needless to say, it must be the work of Huan Yu's public relations team. Even the slightest bit of negative news was not allowed to appear in front of the public. Although Yun Shishir was innocent, once she was involved in such news, it was inevitable that the public would overinterpret it. Therefore, Huan Yu was in a mess. It could be said that they were in a terrible fix because of this matter. On the second day after the film festival ended, the media published articles that pointed to the dark secrets behind Lin Ji's Best Actress Award. The Best Actress Award that originally belonged to Yun Shishir was intercepted halfway by Lin Ji. Yun Shishir did not care. But who was Qin Zhou? How could he let it go so easily? Even if he lost the Best Actress Award, he would use the articles to trample on Lin Ji. Lin Ji dared to touch Yun Shishir's crooked brain. Huan Yu was not to be trifled with. They would not stop until she was splashed with ink. Lin Ji's team quickly responded to this matter with a statement. They tried their best to prove their innocence. Chapter 2025. This incident eventually alarmed the Golden Eagle Festival officials, who came forward to admit that there was a mistake in the award ceremony. Due to a statistical error during the voting, there was a dispute among the judges, which resulted in the wrong award being given out. Lin Ji's side was slapped hard in the face and was extremely embarrassed. The follow-up of the matter was that Lin Ji's side issued a letter of apology, and the public relations team said that because of the official mistake, they were willing to respect the wishes of the officials and give the award to Yun Shishir. Give? Huan Yu's side immediately expressed their stance: we don't care. Even without the Best Actress Award, Yun Shishir's ability was obvious to all. The audience's recognition was the highest praise, and no number of awards could compare to it. This battle had been fought beautifully. The fans were especially contemptuous of Lin Ji's side's behavior and boycotted. Of course, this was all for later. After Mu Yaja returned to the capital, the plane had just landed when news came again that after Song Enya went missing, they kept a close eye on the Song family's every move, seemingly trying to find clues. However, the news they received was that even the Song family did not know where Song Enya had gone. The Song family was in a frenzy, and they used their connections to find Song Enya's whereabouts. Jiang Qimeng was in tears. Not long after she left, news came from the hospital that Song Enya had disappeared after leaving the hospital. When she left, she was wearing a hospital gown, and no one knew where she had gone. After checking the surveillance footage, it showed that after leaving the hospital, she got into a taxi. However, according to the taxi's license plate, they could not find any clues when they reached Huigua Road. Mu Yaja sent people to investigate the latest news. Song Enya booked a plane ticket and flew to San Francisco overnight. She actually went abroad. Went abroad? Why did she go abroad instead of staying in the hospital? Did she have a guilty conscience? Could it be that she was afraid that he would pursue the matter, so she went abroad overnight? Mu Yaja guessed. Jiang Qimeng found him and begged him in every possible way, hoping that he would use his power to find Song Enya's whereabouts as soon as possible. Mu Yaja snorted and said that he wanted to find her more than anyone else. After all, he still owed him an explanation regarding Yun Shishir's matter. She had to be held accountable for this matter. Jiang Qimeng was baffled. She clearly had no idea what Song Enya had done behind her back. Mu Yaja couldn't be bothered with her. After this incident, coupled with Song Enya's vile behavior, he decided that his relationship with the Songs would end here. Don't worry, I will definitely send people to find your daughter. Mu Yaja only left this sentence for her to digest on her own. Jiang Qimeng trembled with fear when she heard that. She glanced at Mu Yaja's expression and saw that it was very ugly. She did not know what her daughter had done to make him so angry. On the other side, at C City Hospital. Under Yun Shishir's meticulous care, Hua Jin's injuries gradually improved. Hua Jin had never received such meticulous care. Yun Shishir accompanied him through the night. When he was thirsty, she would immediately serve him tea. When he was hungry, she did not feel tired and borrowed the hospital's kitchen to make fish soup for him, saying that it would help his wounds heal. Hua Jin was so touched that he could die. No one had ever been so nice to him. Even if there was, it was for selfish reasons. Chapter 2026. His wounds healed very quickly. A week had passed and the stitches could be removed. However, he was not willing to let his wounds heal so quickly. He actually enjoyed the time when she was taking care of him in the hospital. Although it was short, it was very heartwarming. However, just as he was about to be discharged, Ji Yuqi suddenly appeared. There was another woman who appeared with her. At the door of the ward, Hua Jin was stunned to see Xiaoya suddenly appear in front of him. The smile on his face froze for a moment. Xiaoya, why did she come to C City all of a sudden? Didn't they say that she was studying in Japan and would not be able to return for a short period of time? But now, she appeared in the hospital without any precaution. Hua Jin pursed his lips. Suddenly, he felt a little flustered. Yun Shishir, who was feeding him porridge, followed his gaze and saw a woman dressed elegantly at the door of the ward. She was also stunned for a moment. It was a young woman wearing a fur coat. She was tall and slender, and her every movement was graceful and graceful. Just like her name, she was noble and threatening. It was Lin Xueya. She had beautiful makeup on her face. Her delicate eyebrows, seductive eyeliner, snow-white porcelain skin, and red lips were especially charming. Even though they were a few meters away, they could still smell the perfume on her. Mysterious and charming. At a glance, Yun Shishir noticed a tiny beauty mark on the tip of her nose. It did not make her look any less beautiful and, instead, added to her charm. She was a very beautiful woman. She could not think of any adjectives to describe this woman. If she had to describe her, she was like a rose with thorns. Red and beautiful, but extremely prickly when touched. However, from the cold expression on her face, it seemed that she did not come with good intentions. Yun Shishir looked at Hua Jin doubtfully. When she looked back, she saw that this woman was looking at her with a pair of sharp eyes. Her eyes were not sharp, but she could see the strong unfriendliness in them. It was as if she had invaded her territory and was chasing her away with her eyes. Lin Xueya slowly walked into the ward in her high heels. The crisp sound of her heels hitting the floor was extremely ear-piercing as they knocked on Hua Jin's heart. Xiaoya, why are you here? Why can't I come? Lin Xueya smiled coldly and glanced at Yun Shishir. Then, she retracted her gaze and did not look at her anymore. The exquisite makeup on her face, especially those deep eyebrows, coupled with the extremely cold smile on her face, made people shudder for some reason. Her beauty was extremely ostentatious and aggressive. Song Enya's elegance and nobility paled in comparison to her. Her nobility was emitted from her bones. She was a natural-born aristocrat. It could be seen that only people of high birth could have such a temperament. Hua Jin pursed his lips awkwardly. I thought you were still in Japan. Why didn't you tell me that you were injured? Lin Xueya walked over and stopped by the bedside. She lowered her head and looked down at Yun Shishir, her red lips parting slightly. This is my seat. Yun Shishir was stunned. Get out of my way. She gave the order without any courtesy. She was like a high and mighty princess, showing off her nobility. Yun Shishir smiled. He's hungry. I'm feeding him porridge. It's not your turn to talk to me. Chapter 2027. Yuqi, who is she? Yun Shishir. She's in the same crew as Hua Jin. Oh, she's an actress. Lin Shuya smiled. For some reason, the words that came out of her mouth were extremely contemptuous, as if being an actress was a lowly profession. Yun Shishir was instantly displeased. This person's words were sarcastic and had a sense of superiority that came from her bones. She was about to flare up when Hua Jin immediately said, "Xiaoya, don't be like this." "What about me?" Lin Shuya frowned slightly and her tone was full of anger. "Were you with this woman when I wasn't in the country? There was an accident at the film festival. She was the one who took care of me these few days." Hua Jin explained. Lin Shuya took another look at Yun Shishir. However, this time, there was a hint of scrutiny in her eyes. Suddenly, she raised her hand and mercilessly knocked the bowl in Yun Shishir's hand to the ground. The bowl shattered on the ground and the porridge spilled all over the floor. Yun Shishir stood up in shock. Some porridge spilled out from the overturned bowl and stained her body. This bowl of nutritious porridge had just been cooked. She had borrowed the kitchen of the hospital and cooked it for an hour. It was still a little hot. She immediately patted it away. However, she heard Lin Shuya say slowly, "I'll get someone to cook it for you later." Hua Jin was a little angry. He looked at Lin Shuya angrily and said, "What are you doing? I don't like it when you eat porridge cooked by another woman. It's disgusting." Lin Shuya paused and looked a little unhappy. "Also, what do you mean by that tone of yours? Are you blaming me?" He had never spoken to her like this before. He had always been gentle and soft. But now, because of another woman, he was glaring at her. Lin Shuya was very unhappy. Yun Shishir stood up and looked at Lin Shuya. She tried to suppress her anger and smiled coldly. "Miss, didn't anyone teach you manners when you were young? What you're doing is very rude." Lin Shuya was stunned for half a second. She looked at her deeply with surprise and anger in her eyes. "You, Shishir." Ji Yuqi quickly walked over and said, "Aren't you in a hurry to return to the capital? I'll book a plane ticket for you. Miss Shuya will take care of Hua Jin, you don't have to worry." With that said, she took her hand and pulled her out of the door. Yun Shishir could not react in time as she was dragged to the door. "Stop! Lin Shuya her." Yun Shishir was not one to be taken advantage of, though. She turned around and met the other's gaze without fear. "What? I didn't hear you. You." Hua Jin tugged at her sleeve. Lin Shuya waved it away expressionlessly. Yun Shishir was even more indignant at this, but she maintained her elegant demeanor and coldly said, "If you didn't hear me clearly, then there must be something wrong with your ears, but I don't mind repeating myself, you're really ill-mannered." Ji Yuqi listened with trepidation. No one had ever dared to speak to Miss Shuya like that. This Yun Shishir, she was kind enough to help her out, but she didn't take the bait. Lin Shuya laughed out of anger. "What's your name?" Hua Jin said, "You're Ya." "What are you doing?" Lin Shuya turned around and looked at him sharply. "Who is she to you? Why are you speaking up for her? Stop fooling around, Ya. Do you like her?" Lin Shuya asked coquettishly, "Do you like her? Is that why you're so protective of her?" Chapter 20:28. Hearing her question, Hua Jin suddenly fell silent. He looked at Yun Shishir with a complicated gaze. There were too many inexplicable emotions in his eyes. Suddenly, his lips curled into a smile as he retracted his gaze and looked at Lin Shuya with gentle eyes. "How is that possible? Xiaoya, you're the person I love the most." Yun Shishir was stunned. She looked at him in disbelief. After thinking for a while, she suddenly understood. This Lin Shuya. She was so arrogant and rude. Then, she looked at her attitude toward Hua Jin. Could it be that she's the rumored sugar daddy behind Hua Jin? Seeing how Hua Jin accommodated her in every way, her identity must not be simple. She could tell that Hua Jin was pretending to be deeply in love. No matter how good his acting was, he could fool Lin Shuya but not her. He was lying. What Yun Shishir did not know was that to Hua Jin, words of love were nothing. He pretended to be affectionate on the surface, but deep down, he was very cold. Yun Shishir looked at Hua Jin. However, he smiled gently and looked at Lin Shuya affectionately again. You know that I love you the most, but you still asked me such a question to test me. I'm very hurt. Lin Shuya's expression softened. She glanced at Yun Shishir arrogantly. Her expression was that of a victor, but it was self-evident. I don't like you being with other women. As Lin Shuya spoke, she pointed at Yun Shishir arrogantly and ordered, make her disappear from my sight. Xiaoya, immediately. Lin Shuya's voice was not loud, but her expression was very cold. Her tone was indisputable. Hua Jin bit his lip silently and grabbed the bedsheet tightly. He looked at Yun Shishir silently, but his gaze was slightly colder. Shishir, leave. His indifference made her heart ache for him. Yun Shishir knew that he was lying. At this moment, Hua Jin wished that she was the one who stayed by his side instead of Lin Shuya. But he was only pretending to be indifferent to protect her. Lin Shuya was probably not a simple character. Hua Jin was worried that he would hurt her, so he pretended to be so heartless. Lin Shuya cast a sidelong glance at her. Did you hear that? Hurry up and get lost. Don't be an eyesore. Yuqi gently tugged at Yun Shishir's sleeve and kindly reminded her, Shishir, let's go. Seeing Yun Shishir's indifferent expression, Yuqi hardened her heart and whispered into her ear through gritted teeth, you leaving is really for Hua Jin's sake. Lin Shuya is not someone you can afford to offend. If you really care about Hua Jin, leave this place quickly. Yun Shishir glanced at her and pursed her lips, but she still did not take a step forward. Yuqi almost dragged her away forcefully. Hua Jin watched her leave without blinking. He clutched the bedsheet tightly, his heart aching. Why? Can't bear to leave her? Lin Shuya asked coldly. Hua Jin took a deep breath and leaned back on the bed. His gaze was extremely empty. Xiaoya, I don't have any improper thoughts about her. No improper thoughts? Lin Shuya snorted coldly and sat down by the bed. She said expressionlessly, the way you look at her is different. Do you think I can't tell? Don't think too much. Chapter 2029. Hua Jin's lips suddenly curled into a smile. He quietly turned his head and gently caressed her face. I'm yours. Lin Shuya smiled sweetly and kissed him gently on the lips. After a few lingering kisses, she pressed her lips against his and murmured softly, what should I do? I want to be with you forever. She had a perverted obsession and possessiveness towards him. She loved him. She loved him deeply. However, no matter how she looked at it, she could not be with him legitimately. She was born into a noble family. As for her future husband, her family would only choose an outstanding man from an even more noble family to be her fiancé. And this person would definitely not be the lowly Hua Jin. In the entertainment industry, an actor's identity was despised by the real rich. Moreover, the Lin family had already investigated Hua Jin's background thoroughly. Hence, Lin Shuya's father flew into a rage many times and asked her to cut off all ties with Hua Jin. However, Lin Shuya refused to comply. She cried and threw tantrums. She even said something as absurd as, I can get engaged to anyone you want, but I will never be separated from him. Mr. Lin could not persuade her and the father and daughter were still in a deadlock. However, Hua Jin felt physically and mentally exhausted. He did not love Lin Shuya. The so-called love was just an act. He was an actor. Since he was a teenager, he had already wandered around the world of fame and fortune. Meeting Lin Shuya was both his fortune and misfortune. Fortunately, she brought him away from the sea of bitterness. Unfortunately, because of her, he fell into hell once again. In order to survive, he could say all kinds of hypocritical words to her. Acting was a piece of cake for him. Of course, he had thought of leaving her. However, was it possible? At the entrance of the hospital, Jianghu looked at her apologetically and sighed. Sure, I'm sorry. I can only ask you to return to the capital first. Hua Jin may stay in Sea City for a few more days. Miss Xueya is here. You have to keep a distance from Hua Jin. Yunshi's expression was complicated, but she couldn't say a word. She was upset, not because she had been mercilessly chased away by Hua Jin, but because she felt sorry for him. Especially when she saw Hua Jin forcing a smile and saying insincere words to make Lin Xueya happy in order to protect her, she felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. Why did he have to be so petty? Could it be that he was being controlled by her? Why didn't he leave her? Yunshi hated him for failing to live up to expectations. She remembered him saying, if he wasn't afraid of living, why would he be afraid of death? She had once asked him, if you're not even afraid of hell, what's there to be afraid of if you're trying so hard to live? But Hua Jin said, there is a kind of living that is more frightening than dying. She didn't understand. However, Hua Jin said, that's why I'm so envious of you. Sure, you're the darling of the heavens. There are some things that you might not be able to understand. Some people can do whatever they want when they're alive. Some people are struggling at death's door, just like the Walking Dead. Everyone's fate is different. After a pause, he smiled bitterly. To me, being able to face the person I like in an open and above-board manner is a luxurious thing. Yunshi's mood was very complicated. She said to Jianghu, take good care of Hua Jin. I will. Jianghu called a taxi for her and sent her to the airport. When Qin Zhou received the call, he rushed to the airport. Jianghu had already booked the tickets. Why are you in such a hurry? Chapter 20:30. With just a few words, the manager understood what she meant. Let's go back to the capital. There were still a lot of things he was in a hurry to deal with. If not for Yunshi's insistence on staying behind to look after Hua Jin, he would have rushed back to the capital long ago. On the plane, Yunshi suddenly asked, Qin Zhou, who's Xiaoya? Lin Xueya. You know her? Huh, she's a well-known name. The manager looked at her. Why? Have you met her face to face? Yes. Yunshi's face was cold. She's a detestable woman. The manager's lips curled into a smile. Don't be rash and do something stupid. Why? He answered truthfully, the Lin family is incomparable to the Song family. Even if the Lin family's threshold is flattened, it's still a level higher than the Song family. Although the old man from the Lin family is a founding father like the old man from the Song family, the power of the two families can't be compared. Song Enya's father is only a minister, while Lin Xueya's father holds an important position with military power. If it were the Qing dynasty, he would be equivalent to the commander of the Nine Gates. His influence is incomparable to the Song families. In other words, if the central government wants to deploy troops, they have to abide by the Lin family's wishes. He changed the topic and smiled. Still, you don't have to be afraid of her. Given your man's background, the Lin family will still make a detour when they see you. Yunshi, there are 4 prominent families in the capital, the Mews, the Gus, the Lins, and the Songs. These 4 families have deep ties with each other and have a lot of interests involved. The reason why I asked you to keep a distance from Hua Jin is that I don't want you to go against the Lins because of him. I understand. Yunshi replied faintly, then leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes to rest. It was already 3 in the afternoon by the time they reached the capital. Qin Zhou sent Yunshi home and hurried back to the company. Before he went back, he specially said, rest well for the next few days. I've applied for leave from the production team for you. Besides, your scenes are almost done, so you don't have to worry about the progress. Alright. Let's have a good talk with President Mu. Yunshishir suddenly stopped talking. When she got home, Yu and Xiao Yichen were already looking forward to her arrival. Before they boarded the plane, Yunshishir had already called home to inform her. Yu excitedly grabbed Xiao Yichen and rushed to the supermarket to buy fish and meat. They planned to make a sumptuous dinner to reward their mother. Well, although Yu was a boy, she was becoming more and more like a good wife and mother. As Xiao Yichen accompanied him to buy groceries, he thought to himself, when I get married in the future, I must use Yu as my template. I must marry a wife as virtuous as Yu. She was gentle, virtuous, and not only did she do all the housework, she was also very smart. If his wife was as smart as Yu, he would not have to worry about their children's homework. While Yu was picking groceries, Xiao Yichen had nothing else to do. So, he was thinking about something far away. If Yu knew what Xiao Yichen was thinking, he would have shivered. Mommy. You're finally willing to come back. I thought you didn't want Yu anymore. Yu threw himself into his mother's arms as he grumbled bitterly. Yunshishir did not know whether to laugh or cry. How could that be? How could mommy bear to not want Yu? Then why are you only back now? Chapter 2031. Nope. Yunshishir said guiltily, Mommy and Daddy's relationship is very good. Then why are you gritting your teeth when you say, very good? Detective Yu narrowed his eyes and sensed something fishy. Yunshishir felt even more guilty. When did I? Alright, I don't care about you. You're making me worry all day long. I'm going to cook. Yu ran to the kitchen and started her grand plan. Yunshishir sat on the sofa with Xiao Yichen and watched TV. Xiao Yichen watched military programs with great interest. She sat beside him and scrolled through Weibo on her phone. She hadn't scrolled through Weibo for a few days and didn't expect it to explode. Life was like a drama. The news about Lin Ji stealing the Best Actress award spread like wildfire. Under Huan Yu's influence, all the major media outlets published articles on their front pages, accusing Lin Ji of stealing the Best Actress award and the shady dealings behind it. Originally, the Best Actress award belonged to Yunshishir, but the team behind Lin Ji had sinister intentions. They did not hesitate to use underhanded means to snatch the award that originally belonged to Yunshishir. It was as though they were robbers. Recently, the crew of Lethal Beauty had been suffering because of this. Gu Xiaoyang turned pale with anger. Halfway through the filming of the drama, the female lead had such a scandal. He was worried that when the drama finished filming and entered the post-production stage, if the publicity wasn't good enough, he was afraid that the public would boycott it. If that happened, the ratings would flop and his reputation would be greatly affected. He had put in a lot of effort into this drama so that it could be a high-quality drama. However, if it flopped because of reasons other than quality, anyone would be upset. Gu Xiaoyang even went to Huan Yu to make a fuss. He went straight to Ji Lin and asked about the rumors online. On Weibo, Tieba, blogs, and all the major internet portals, the scandal of the Golden Eagle Festival was still published on the front page. This was obviously Huan Yu's intention to kick Lin Ji when she was down and trample her to death. Most importantly, Lin Ji was the female lead of Lethal Beauty and Huan Yu had also invested a lot in the drama. Gu Xiaoyang immediately questioned, Huan Yu is publicizing Lin Ji's scandal. What if it affects the reputation of Lethal Beauty? He regretted it so much. He shouldn't have compromised and asked Lin Ji to be the female lead. If it was Yunshishir, there wouldn't be so much trouble. Now, the netizens on Weibo had a lot of disgust towards Lin Ji. They even suggested that when Lethal Beauty was aired, they would boycott and never watch a movie with that bitch. Gu Xiaoyang was so angry that he almost vomited blood. However, Huan Yu's attitude. However, Ji Lin said lightly, if the TV series is good and attractive, how can the audience resist it? Are you sure? Gu Xiaoyang narrowed his eyes in disbelief. It's not like there hasn't been such a precedent. Previously, the A-lister Wen Zhang cheated on Yang Di after marriage and it was a big deal. After that, the audience boycotted all the dramas that Yang Di starred in. Now, a few years have passed and Yang Di is still not popular. Can you say that an artist's scandal doesn't affect the reputation of the drama? Chapter 2032. Gu Xiaoyang was speechless. With Shishir's identity as a victim and the fans she gained from The Green Apple, it's enough to support the show's ratings. Besides, other than Lin Ji, there are so many A-listers in the production team. What's there to be afraid of? What's more, the audience was just here to watch a good show and didn't mind blowing things up. We'll just treat it as a publicity stunt. This way, we'll have a hot topic and a gimmick. Huan Yu was very confident. The audience said they didn't want to watch it, but what about after it was aired? Now that everyone knew that Yun Shishir and Lin Ji were archenemies, the audience would be very interested to know what kind of TV series these two would star in. Huan Yu was also thinking from this perspective. Firstly, trampling on Lin Ji now would, in a sense, allow the production team of Lethal Beauty to ride on the hype. Secondly, because of this incident, Yun Shishir received a lot of attention. With this attention, the show would definitely be a hit. After all, the cat fight was so exciting, the show would be even more exciting. Ji Lin had been in the industry for many years and was very experienced. He had a good grasp of the audience's thoughts. Moreover, how many netizens would say they were boycotting the show in real life? How many of them would there be among the more than 1 billion people? It wasn't even worth mentioning. Most of them said they didn't want it, but their bodies were honest. Most of the audience for the show rarely went on Weibo. They only cared about the quality of the show and didn't care about anything else. It was fine as long as it looked good. This would only be beneficial to Yun Shishir. It was the best opportunity to improve her favorability. Missing out on a best actress and gaining reputation was not a loss. Gu Xiaoyang was rendered speechless. Ji Lin said, "Focus on your show." Then, he invited him to leave. However, Lin Ji's scandal was still very lively online. Lin Ji's side had already posted 5 statements and apologies, but Yun Shishir didn't say anything on Weibo. The netizens collectively didn't buy it. Yun Shishir was speechless as she scrolled through Weibo. It turned out that the feeling of being protected by fanatical fans. It was so complicated. On one hand, she was touched. On the other hand, she was helpless. Some of the brainless fans ran to Lin Ji's Weibo to curse and were banned by the system. They created accounts again, they came aggressively. Yun Shishir didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She opened her homepage and browsed through the comments left by the netizens. Suddenly, a comment caught her eye, "Mistress. Evil mistress. Only die-hard fans like you would like such a bitch. Do you know who Yun Shishir's backer is? Don't be fooled by her innocent and harmless appearance. She is the third party who has pushed out the fiancé of the Mu family's heir, Mu Wanru." Yun Shishir was shocked. Even though this netizen's comments section was full of criticism, Yun Shishir was still unsettled. Who was this person? How would she know about her relationship with Mu Yaxia? In the industry, not many people knew about her relationship with Mu Yaxia. Could it be that there was a mole? Who could it be? Could it be Lin Ji? Yun Shishir suspected that Lin Ji had used a fake identity to maliciously slander her. Forget it. What a clown. Yun Shishir was still in shock at the thought of Mu Wanru. After Mu Yaxia rushed back to the capital, he had a short call with her. He only said a few words and didn't say anything else. However, Qin Zhou said that Mu Yaxia had returned to the capital early to deal with Song Enya's matter. Chapter 2033. Song Enya's bizarre disappearance had thrown the Song family into chaos. For some unknown reason, Song Enya had mysteriously disappeared without a trace. She did not know what had happened, either. After Yu finished cooking, he saw Yun Shishir sitting there in a daze. He walked over and gently flicked her forehead. "Mommy, what are you thinking about?" Nothing." Yun Shishir pouted and rubbed her forehead. "It hurts. I see that you're in a daze. You don't look too happy." Yu was meticulous and could tell at a glance that Yun Shishir was a little unhappy. Yun Shishir shook her head and did not say anything. In her heart, Yu was just a child. What could he know? There was no need to affect a child's mood. Yu sighed inwardly. It seemed that Daddy had made Mommy angry again. He felt at a loss. He knew very well that no matter how much he doted on Mommy, it could not compare to a gentle word from Daddy. He understood what his Mommy wanted. He could not give it to her. Moreover, as a junior, it was not appropriate for him to intervene in the matter between Daddy and Mommy. Intervening would only make things worse. It was better to let the two of them settle their own matters. Although he was unhappy, he could only pretend that he did not know. The little guy was young, but he was very perceptive. He only smiled and did not expose her. Instead, he said gently, "Mommy, let's eat. Daddy, that bad guy, is probably still busy in the company. Let's not wait for him. Has he been coming home very late these few days?" "Yes. I've been working overtime at the company to keep an eye on him." "Don't worry, Daddy didn't go out to play." Yun Shishir was amused by Yu's mischievous behavior. Little Ichen immediately testified from the side. "I'll prove it. Although Daddy comes home very late, he comes home every day to report." Yun Shishir laughed uncontrollably. "You two are smart." "Of course. Mommy isn't here, so we have to supervise Daddy." "Did he eat on time?" "No, there was one time when I went to the company to visit him. At 12:30 in the afternoon, he was still in a meeting. He seems to be very busy these days." Yun Shishir nodded. Suddenly, she picked up Xiao Yichen and said, "Let's not wait for him. Let's eat." "Yes." The dinner was very sumptuous. There was fish and meat, but not much. There were only 5 dishes and 1 soup. It was very exquisite. Yun Shishir didn't eat anything on the plane, so she was starving. She sat at the dining table and didn't care about her image. Yu was dumbfounded at this sight. He scooped food for her as he watched her gorging herself. "Mommy, can't you at least pay attention to your image? Be more ladylike." Yu pursed her lips and said tactfully, "You look like a refugee." Xiao Yichen added, "Huh. I'm already used to Mommy's table manners." Yun Shishir was speechless. She fell silent and glared at Xiao Yichen. "What's wrong? Do you dislike Mommy?" No. Xiao Yichen held back his laughter. "Mommy is beautiful no matter what. Why do I need to pay attention to my image in front of you?" After dinner, Yun Shishir insisted on washing the dishes herself. Yu sat beside her on a stool and chatted with her. Xiao Yichen was assigned to walk the dog. He felt wronged, but when Yu glared at him, the little guy obediently walked the dog out. The kitchen was silent for a moment. Chapter 2034. Yu cupped his head and looked at her quietly. Suddenly, he said, "Mommy." Yu wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he said nothing. "I'm just calling you. I've missed you for so many days." Yun Shishir's heart warmed. She bent down and kissed his forehead gently. "Mommy missed you too. You missed me, but I didn't say I would come back early." Yu snorted proudly and kissed her cheek. Yun Shishir smiled when she saw his proud expression. She liked it very much. She liked seeing Yu's adorable expression. He was like a little elf that made people want to dote on him. Halfway through, Yu insisted on helping, but Xianxia refused. It was winter. Although the water was warm, Xia's heart still ached and she insisted on washing the dishes herself. Yu had no choice but to give up. Mommy's hands are so beautiful. Yu's heart aches for you when you wash the dishes so much. Yu's heart aches for you when you wash the dishes. Oh, okay. I know that mommy loves Yu. After washing the dishes, Xiao Yichen also walked the dogs home. She accompanied the two children to watch TV before coaxing them to bed. It was late at night. After washing up, she lay on the bed. However, she tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. Outside the window, the night was quiet. However, the quieter it was, the more uneasy she felt. Would he come back tonight? She had not called him when she returned to the capital today. She felt that the two of them were in a cold war. Xianxia closed her eyes and suddenly felt sad. It was past midnight. Suddenly, she heard the sound of a car engine coming from afar. Then, she heard the car turn off in the garage. At that moment, she felt her heart clench. This situation seemed familiar. 7 years ago, it was also a night like this. She was arranged to stay in a villa near the sea, silently waiting for his arrival. It was also in such a dark night that she heard the car turn off in front of the villa. Then, she heard his steady footsteps getting closer and closer. At that time, she was so uneasy, not knowing what kind of man would appear in front of her. At this moment, he was just as nervous as before. Xianxia suddenly heard the sound of the door being pushed open. Along with the slight movement, he seemed to have walked into the living room and was resting on the sofa. She became increasingly uneasy. Every minute and every second felt as long as a century. He went home. At this time, she should be happily opening the door to welcome his return. But ever since they parted on bad terms, he felt a little awkward now. Xianxia covered herself with the quilt. It turned out that the Cold War was so tiring. She wanted to hug him tightly and pour out her heart, but she did not have the courage to do so. Wuxia did not know that she was back. He sat in the living room for a while, then went to the dining room. He poured a glass of water and drank it in one gulp. No matter how good the soundproofing was, she could still hear his footsteps in the living room in the silence. Then, she seemed to hear him walking towards the bedroom. Her heart was in her throat. Gotcha. The door suddenly opened. The man was suddenly stunned for a moment. He looked at the bulging figure on the bed. She was back. Why didn't she tell him? Xianxia gritted her teeth and hid in the quilt. She did not dare to poke her head out and pretended to be asleep. She did not know how to face him. Chapter 20:35. Hence, she could only pretend to be asleep to get out of this awkward situation. Wuxia turned around and went to the bathroom. The sound of running water seemed to indicate that he was washing up. After washing up, he took off his clothes, changed into his pajamas, and got onto the bed gently. The man's tall and lanky body gave her a great sense of security. Even though she didn't touch him, Xianxia could still feel that solid chest behind her. She shut her eyes tightly and didn't dare to open them. She pretended to be asleep and her breathing was calm. And he didn't seem to notice that she was awake. He thought that she was already asleep, so his movements were very careful, afraid that he would wake her up. Just when she thought that they were going to spend the entire night estranged, the man behind her suddenly intimately pressed against her. His body was very hot. It was unusually hot. Even through the coral fleece pajamas, she could still feel the burning temperature of his skin. Why was it so hot? While Xianxia was in a daze, she felt his gentle movements. The man gently hugged the back of her neck and casually reached out an arm to cushion her throat. Then, he gently and carefully pulled her body into his embrace. His other arm circled around her waist and trapped her in his embrace. Xianxia was so nervous that her body stiffened. She didn't dare to move. The man seemed to notice that her body was slightly stiff. He was a little surprised and thought that she was frozen. The temperature was extremely cold at night. Even though the heater was turned on in the room, her body had always been weak and she fell sick easily. He knew her well. Once the workload was slightly heavier, her body couldn't take it anymore. If she didn't take care of herself, she would fall sick. Wuxia hugged her closer, trying to warm her with his body's temperature. Unspoken still had her eyes closed and didn't dare to move. She was still a little angry with him. Hence, when he wanted to hug her to sleep, she didn't seem to want to cooperate at all. She deliberately acted awkward and pretended to talk in her sleep. Then, she pounced on the empty space on the other side of the bed. Wuxia helplessly curled his lips and hugged her waist to prevent her from moving. After tossing and turning for a long time, the man finally realized that something was wrong. The woman in his arms was not asleep at all. She was still awake, but she pretended to be asleep to deal with him. He could tell that she was still angry with him. Even if he deliberately tried to get close to her and curry favor, she didn't seem to buy it at all. She kept running to the other side, wanting nothing more than to get as far away from him as possible. Little idiot. Was she holding a grudge against him? In the darkness, Wuxia's black jade-like handsome eyes narrowed slightly as he stared at the woman in his arms who was pretending to be calm. It was obvious that he had seen through this fellow's awkward thoughts, but he didn't know what to do. He really didn't know what to do with this woman. After remaining silent for a while, he finally spoke. "He's awake?" Unspoken didn't say anything and didn't want to talk to him. She was angry, but because of him, she couldn't vent her anger. She could only hold it in and bear with it. She could only use this little trick to silently accuse him. Wuxia saw that she was ignoring him, but he wasn't angry. He lowered his head and gently kissed her forehead. Unspoken suddenly turned her face away and avoided him silently. She intentionally avoided him. Chapter 2036. The man fell silent again. "Since you're awake, there's no need to pretend to be asleep." Despite his words, Unspoken remained indifferent with her eyes tightly shut. Little thing. She needed to be taught a lesson. With this thought in mind, the man leaned over slightly and gently covered her with half of his body. Since she was pretending to be asleep and unwilling to face him, he would make her wake up. His large palm reached under her clothes and traced her tender and smooth skin all the way up. His body was boiling hot, but his fingertips were slightly cold. When they brushed across her skin, it made her shiver uneasily. Unspoken suddenly grabbed his arm. In the darkness, she slowly opened her eyes. Under the moonlight outside the window, her pupils were like agate, shining with a glittering luster. "You're finally willing to wake up?" Wuxia's lips curled into a smile. Unspoken, however, asked coldly, "Why did you come back so late?" "I had a dinner with a few directors tonight." Unspoken asked again, "Why didn't you call me these past few days?" He said calmly, "You're angry." Unspoken felt a pang in her heart as tears welled up in her eyes. She widened her eyes and retorted, "Is this the reason? It sounds so pompous. Can you ignore me just because I'm angry? So you're giving me the cold shoulder?" Wuxia was silent. She sucked in a deep breath of cold air before continuing. "I admit that my tone was a little harsh that day, and it may have hurt you, but aren't you the same?" Since she had already said this, she might as well vent all the unhappiness that had been buried in her heart for the past few days. "Is this how you treated Xianxia before I showed up? When she was angry, or when she was being unreasonable, would you also give her the cold shoulder? Ignore her?" Wuxia did not say anything and did not even give a basic explanation. Unspoken smiled coldly. "It can't be like that. You can be patient and coax her, let her be arrogant and willful, but..." From Xianxia's words, she learned that Wuxia's love for her was almost limitless. No matter how arrogant, willful, or unreasonable she was, he would tolerate it. But why? But he treated her like this? How unfair. She was his wife. Regardless of whether it was emotionally or nominally, she was his rightful wife. What grave mistake did she make that he had unscrupulously neglected her for so many days? She was restless and suspicious every day. She did not know what he was thinking. She did not return to the capital. On one hand, she wanted to take care of Hua Jin. On the other hand, she did not know how to face him when she returned to the capital. Yunshurshu endured the bitterness in her heart and asked word by word, "Am I not worthy of your love? Do you have to be so sarcastic? I just want to know if I'm more important to you or Song Enya?" She asked stubbornly. She clearly knew the answer in her heart. Whether it was from Qin Zhou or those close to him, be it Lu Jinyu or Jiang Shen, all of them said that she was important to him. Still, she could not believe it and wanted to verify it personally from him. She could only be sure of the words coming out of his mouth. Why are you asking this question? Chapter 2037. Isn't it good for you to answer me when I ask? I want to know because I feel uneasy. I have a feeling that Song Enya is more important to you than I am. You can break your promise with me for her sake. You can indulge her and hurt me time and time again. What exactly is the reason for you to be so protective of her? If it were someone else who did this to me, you'd definitely get rid of them by hook or by crook. But Song Enya has crossed my bottom line time and time again, yet you still don't have a tough attitude. Is she really that important? So important that you can ignore my feelings? Her voice was calm, but the anxiety in her tone made him frown again. He pinched her cheeks and fiercely sealed her mouth with a kiss, trying to force her to calm down. Pressing his lips against hers, he asked in a deep voice, "Must you be so self-righteous and make assumptions about me?" Yunshurshu widened her eyes, but a line of tears fell from the corner of her eyes and landed on his arm. Her voice was trembling and hoarse as she broke down. Other than making assumptions about you, what else can I do? You're not willing to tell me anything. Other than trying to figure out your psychological world, what else can I do? Mu Yaja's eyes flashed fiercely as his heart was stung by her words. No matter what it is, I like to tell you everything. No matter if it's happy, sad, agitated, or sad, I'm willing to tell you everything. But what about you? You're always silent and don't let me know anything. Do you know that I feel very lonely like this? Mu Yaja was suddenly speechless. He was surrounded by a panic that he had never felt before. He did not know how to respond to her uneasiness. The only thing he could do was to hug her tightly, as if by pressing her head against his chest, she could hear his fiery heartbeat. He really wasn't good with words, and he wasn't good at expressing his love. I love you, these mushy words of love, he said again and again in his heart, but at this moment, it was hard for him to say it. The only thing he could do was to hug her tightly, as if doing so would allow her to feel the warmth in his heart. It seemed that this was the only way to let her listen to his heartbeat so that there would be no suspicion of hypocrisy. But she wanted him to tell her his burning feelings. It was driving him crazy. He didn't know how to express it so that the words, "You're the most important," would have more power and weight. Yunshurshu buried her face in his chest, and her tears became more and more unrestrained. She recalled the despair she felt when she was on the verge of death on the top floor of the hotel in Sea City. It was like the end of the world. However, all of this was thanks to Song Enya. Her sixth sense had always been accurate. Even without any concrete evidence, she was certain that the Missy was behind all this. How could he understand her hatred for that Missy? What exactly does that Missy mean to you? What do I mean to you? Can you answer me? Mu Yaja hugged her, his heart aching. Just as Yunshurshu was feeling disheartened, the man suddenly said in a deep voice, "Her appearance once drove away the heaviest darkness in my life." Chapter 2038. She appeared with a face that was very similar to hers. It's good to think of her when I see it. At least, she brought me out of that gloomy world. He was never willing to talk about this matter. It was because of that gloominess that he did not want to recall even for a second. In such a big family, every step was dangerous. All along, he and his mother had relied on each other. He was her support, and she was his support. But one day, they were separated by life and death. It was a despair that almost destroyed the world. It was Song Enya who held his hand and brought him away from that darkness. To her, it's gratitude. It's Gu Nianji. Then, what about me? Unspoken was extremely jealous. It turned out that Song Enya used to be so important to him. In his heart, she seemed irreplaceable. What about her? What kind of place did she hold in his heart? Mu Yaja hugged her shoulders tightly. At this moment, this man, who had always been tall and steady, hugged her tightly like a childish and uneasy child. Because my world needed sunlight, you appeared. Because my world needed sunlight, so you appeared. Unspoken's pupils contracted. This was probably the first time in a long time that he had said such romantic words. Her heart was instantly filled with a warm current of endless energy. Unspoken bit her lip, crying and laughing at the same time. He said that she was his sunlight, the sunlight in his world. Mu Yaja looked at her crying, but he did not know what she was thinking. He held her face and said helplessly, "I'm sorry. Maybe I'm not good at expressing myself. I don't know what to do to stop your imagination from running wild." As he spoke softly, he gently kissed her brows, the tip of her nose, and the tears at the corner of her eyes. As for what you said, in the future, it won't happen again. I'll tell you everything you want to know. No matter what it was, he would never bury it in his heart again. This was a promise he made. When he said it, he would do it. Unspoken choked. If I was really pushed down the stairs by Mu Wanru that night, what would you do? If it wasn't for Hua Jin that night, she would have really been brought to hell by Mu Wanru and consigned to eternal damnation. What would happen to him? Would she be sad? Mu Yaja suddenly hugged her tightly. Her words, however, had undoubtedly hurt him. Over the past few days, he had constantly thrown himself into work to punish himself. How could he not hate himself for his carelessness, which had allowed Song Enya to find a loophole and put her in danger? How could he not blame himself? She thought he was snubbing her. Actually, he was just punishing himself for his failure. Mu Yaja caressed her cheek and said in a deep voice, "I will accompany you." Even if it was hell. He would also accompany her. Unspoken felt her heart skip a beat. The words that she had always wanted to hear, now coming out of his mouth, seemed somewhat unreal. In fact, she had always felt that the so-called relationship between her and Mu Yaja was unfair, perhaps because of her family background. They were not on equal footing. Perhaps there was a reason for being well-matched in terms of social status. However, she had always been competing for him. Mu Yaja told her to stop acting, but she persisted. She only wanted to become an outstanding woman one day and stand by his side. Chapter 2039. That was why she tried to be more perfect. But he said that he would be with her. Really? Was he coaxing her or did he really mean it? Unspoken suddenly felt that she had had enough. She wanted to hear him say something to make her feel at ease, but now that he had said it, she actually questioned the authenticity of his words. This man probably disdained to say any hypocritical words. If he could say that, it meant that he really meant it. Maybe, she desperately wanted a sense of security from him. Now that she had gotten it, she started to worry about her gains and losses. Unspoken hugged him back and hugged his strong back tightly. It was enough. It was really enough. She was a woman who was easily satisfied and did not ask for too much. If he could say that, it meant that she was really important to him. No matter what he said, she would trust him unconditionally. Even if it was a lie, she would believe it to the end. Even if it was poison, she would accept it with a smile. This was her trust in him. Not angry anymore. Seeing that her expression had finally eased a little, Mu Yaja pinched her face and pecked the corner of her lips. This little thing's bad mood came and went quickly. She was satisfied with just a few words of coaxing. Seeing that she was satisfied, he suddenly felt a little empty in his heart. Only then did he realize that this woman didn't actually want much. Giving her a sense of security was enough. She was different from other women. If it were other women who were angry at this time, as long as a man gave them expensive jewelry, Hermes bags, Chanel brands, diamonds, and rings, their anger would probably dissipate and they would be beaming with joy. But what she wanted was just a sentence of affirmation, a promise, a sentence of, "You are very important," and her heart would bloom. He helplessly realized that what she wanted was so insignificant, but he had not done well enough. His heart felt like it was being stabbed. It would not happen again. It really would not happen again. He would not let her be in danger again, he would not let her be neglected, and he would not let her make wild guesses. Mu Yaja hugged her, his heart full of guilt. These few days, he had been thinking about her thoughts, but in the end, he realized that what she wanted was so simple. It was a long night. He hugged her and coaxed her, and the two of them fell asleep in each other's arms. Early in the morning, Yunshirsher opened her eyes and woke up, but the bed was empty. The man had already left. Mu Yaja woke up very early. At 7:00 in the morning, he hurriedly got up and left a good morning kiss on her forehead. After washing up, he went out. These days, the crew was on holiday, and Qin Zhou was also very busy. It was rare for her to have some free time. Yunshirsher thought that she should make up for the fatigue from the previous few days, so she turned over, wrapped herself in the quilt, and fell asleep again. Mu Corporation's building. When Mu Yaja arrived at the office, Minyu had been waiting for him for a long time. As soon as he entered the office, Minyu rushed up to him. "Chairman Mu, there's news." "Speak." "She is now in Baltimore, Maryland. Her itinerary has been controlled, but please rest assured that the people we sent did not alert her. They are currently monitoring her every move." Mu Yaja sat down at the table. "Baltimore, Maryland? Where is she?" Chapter 2040. Mu Yaja's eyes shot up sharply. "Impregnation?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Minyu looked left and right before he suddenly walked over, bent down, and whispered a few words into his ear. Mu Yaja's face turned colder, and his eyes emitted a heart-palpitating chill. Minyu stood up and observed his expression in fear. Mu Yaja sneered. "She's crazy." She had undoubtedly touched his reverse scale by doing this. Naive. She thought that her plan was foolproof because it was meticulous. Did she think that he was a decoration? How dare they try to pull such a stunt behind his back? So what if she succeeded? Did she expect him to admit it? What a joke. Since she insisted on planting such a seed of disaster, he did not mind accompanying her to the end. "We're also very surprised to hear this news." Mu Yaja said coldly, "We must not let her succeed." "Yes, I understand. I'll do as you say." "Does the Songs know about this?" "They probably don't. She hid it from everyone, including the Songs." "Ha." Mu Yaja slammed the report on the table and leaned back in his chair. He closed his eyes to rest for a while before suddenly opening them with a sharp gaze. "Come here." Minyu immediately walked over and bowed respectfully. Mu Yaja whispered a few words into his ear before waving his hand. "Do as I say immediately." "Yes." Minyu nodded and hurriedly left the office. Mu Yaja picked up the report on the table with a cold gaze, his lips curling into a cold smile. Since she had done this, he did not mind eliminating the source of the problem. Baltimore, Maryland, United States. Johns Hopkins Hospital. Song Enya stood in front of the window and looked at the night view. The window reflected her pale face, which looked lifeless. On the third day of her arrival in the United States, she was arranged to stay in the hospital. She followed the doctor's instructions and tried her best to recuperate and wait for the best time to conceive. Her body was not in good condition, so she needed some time to recuperate. However, she was worried that the longer they delayed, the easier it would be for them to be exposed. She had to finish this before he did. She knew that this time, it was all or nothing. There was no room for failure. In fact, she already had a plan for this. She was just hesitating whether she should do it or not. However, after that experience and witnessing Mu Yaja's ruthlessness, she made up her mind that even if it meant risking everything, she would still carry out this matter. She did not alert anyone, not even Song Yunxi and Jiang Qimeng. She left the hospital and quietly boarded a flight to the U.S. She was determined to leave without hesitation. This idea didn't pop up in a single night. In fact, before this, she had already laid out a detailed plan and arranged everything properly. With her identity, it could be said that her path was unimpeded. There was no resistance at all. Relying on her powerful connections in the country, she almost effortlessly got what she wanted. Now, she just had to wait for the right time to recuperate and undergo artificial insemination at the best time to conceive. She thought that everything was foolproof. Everything was going on nervously and orderly. She would not allow anyone to get in her way. This matter could only succeed and not fail. She had no way out. She could only move forward without hesitation. There was a knock on the door. Chapter 2041. Come in. She stared out of the window with a deep gaze. Behind her, the door opened and a doctor with brown hair and blue eyes slowly walked in. He stopped beside her and asked in a deep voice, "Madam Song, are you resting?" "Yes." The doctor immediately apologized tactfully. "I'm really sorry to disturb you." "It's all right." She turned around and smiled elegantly, showing off her red lips, white teeth, and bright eyes. "How's it going?" The doctor smiled. "I took the liberty to disturb you because of this matter." "Yes, please go ahead." The doctor said tirelessly, "According to what you said, everything is progressing very quickly. However, because the semen is stored at an ultra-low temperature in a liquid nitrogen tank at -170 degrees Celsius, the chances of a successful pregnancy are extremely low. This depends on the quality of the sperm. Furthermore, the artificial insemination can only be completed by relying on complicated equipment and high-intensity technology." Hearing this, she suddenly became nervous and stared at him. "Are you saying that the chances of success are very low?" "Yes." "How low?" She was so nervous that she no longer had her elegant demeanor. She grabbed the doctor's collar, eager to know how low the chances were. The doctor maintained his good demeanor and comforted her uneasiness. "Madam Song, I can understand how you feel. Please calm down. The success rate is low, but it's not as difficult as you think. It's about 40%. In other words, the chances of me conceiving a child are only 40%? She widened her eyes, somewhat unable to accept this. The doctor nodded and pushed the spectacles on the bridge of his nose before explaining, "In addition, your body is weak. Even if the sperm enters your body, it won't be able to complete the union. In other words, part of the reason for such a low success rate is because of your weak body." She bit her lower lip hard. "Fortunately, this gentleman's sperm is very good and is in good condition. However, I'd like to ask if Madam Song can accept IVFET if there's really no conditions." IVFET. Embryo transfer. She had never heard of it before. The reason she knew about artificial insemination was mainly because Mu Yaja had planned to use this technology 7 years ago to select an excellent surrogate mother to give birth to a child through artificial insemination. Yun Shishir was selected at that time, but the report stated that she was not suitable for artificial insemination and the success rate was very low. Song Enya was very surprised when she learned about this. Not long ago, he suddenly remembered this matter. Thus, for some unknown reason, he wanted to stake everything on this one throw and bet all of his chips on this. IVF, though? She did not know. IVF is also known as test tube baby in your country. To put it simply, it means to take the eggs and sperm out of the body and let them complete the fertilization process in an artificially controlled environment outside the body. Once the fertilization process is successful, the early embryos will be transplanted into your uterus, and the child will be conceived in your uterus. However, there is one thing that I need your opinion on. IVF is very painful, even more painful than artificial insemination. Are you willing to try it? What's the success rate? Chapter 2042. 99%? Song Enya's heart skipped a beat. She turned around and looked out of the window with a complicated gaze. She did not care how painful the so-called pain was. Now that she had her own way, no matter how painful it was, she had to do it without hesitation. Moreover, the doctor said that the success rate was very high. 99% was enough. She turned around and asked, "How long will IVF take?" "It'll take a certain amount of time." "How long is a certain amount of time?" she asked nervously. "I don't have much time. It'll take at least half a month." "Do it immediately. As soon as possible." "Okay, Madam Song. Please don't be anxious. We'll do it as soon as possible." With that, the doctor left in a hurry. Bang! The door closed softly. Song Enya fell onto the sofa as if she had lost all her strength and looked blankly at the ceiling. She did not know how many connections and assets she had used to rush to America this time. She even secretly stole 8 figures from Song Yunqi's account behind the back of the Song family. 8 figures. The price of artificial insemination was much higher than she had imagined. That day, Mu Yaja's indifference made her feel disheartened. She knew very well that this man was disappointed in her. She had also forced herself to give up, to let go, to stop chasing after him. However, she suddenly realized that this man had unknowingly become her whole world. If she were to leave him, her world would instantly become dark and hopeless. What was frustrating was that even though she hated him a lot, she really could not leave him. Therefore, she took an unconventional approach and came up with this idea. She planned to use artificial insemination to secretly get pregnant with his child behind his back. She thought that Unspoken had made use of the child to gain his favor, so why should she not use such a method, too? The status of a mother in a wealthy family always depended on her child. With Unspoken's status, she was not worthy of it. However, she was worthy of the Mu family. Unspoken must have used the 2 children to tie Brother Mu's heart, so why should she not do the same? If she was pregnant with Brother Mu's child, he would definitely not blame her or abandon her. The child would become a deep bond between them. Even if Brother Mu was cruel and resolute, she would have a child with him. Even if she did not have Brother Mu, she would still have spiritual sustenance. Moreover, no matter how ruthless he would never ignore her. Brother Mu might not care about his own flesh and blood, but the Mu family should, right? Which rich and powerful family didn't value inheritance? She would not force it. Even if she had to marry Brother Mu and become his concubine, she had her reasons now. In the future, there would be plenty of time. She didn't believe that she couldn't beat Unspoken. At this thought, she clenched her fists so tightly that her sharp nails dug into her palms. At this moment, the Song family was in chaos. Especially Song Yunqi, when she found out that an 8-figure sum of money in her account evaporated overnight, she was so anxious that her head hurt. There was no need to investigate to know who had moved the money. Other than his father, Song Enya was the only one who knew his account password. Now, she had also disappeared without a trace. If it wasn't her, who could it be? What a disappointing fellow. Where did he go? Chapter 2043. Song Enya was very ruthless. She was worried that her whereabouts would be exposed to Muyaja sooner or later. Hence, she did not inform anyone. Song Zhengguo was so angry that his blood pressure rose sharply and he almost had a stroke. When he learned that his daughter had disappeared overnight, he was so angry that he scolded Jiang Qimeng harshly. Look! Look at how you've taught such a good daughter to become like this. She disappeared overnight as if she had evaporated from the face of the earth. Is this the good daughter you've taught? Enya is just a child. She's not sensible at all. Are you not sensible, too? You must find the child as soon as possible. If anything happens to Enya, I'll divorce you. Jiang Qimeng was already worried and distracted. She had already asked for help from her connections to search for the child. Now that she was humiliated by him, she even had the thought of killing herself. He actually dared to say something like, divorce. Besides, was she really the only one responsible for Song Enya's current state? In the entire Song family, he was clearly the one who doted on his daughter the most. He took a large part of the responsibility for Enya's current state. When Enya was disobedient when they were young, she would be yelled at by him when she wanted to educate her properly. Jiang Qimeng felt aggrieved and helpless as tears rolled down her cheeks. She was helpless and helpless. Divorce was impossible. If he wanted her to divorce, she might as well die. If word got out that she wanted a divorce at this age, wouldn't she become a laughingstock? At the very least, she would die a glorious death with the title of the mayor's wife. Jiang Qimeng also felt extremely disheartened. All these years, she had suffered many grievances in this family, but she had no one to complain to. Although she was the madam of the Song family and the mayor's wife in name, she was well respected and had a status. When she entered and exited the upper class, she received polite and attentive gazes. This indeed satisfied her vanity to a large extent. But in reality? How could she have any status in such a big family? She was the eldest madam. On the surface, it sounded nice. In such a patriarchal family, how could she have the right to interrupt? Putting aside the days of fear and trepidation, as well as the colorful flags that Song Zhengguo would fly outside behind her back, as the legal wife, she could only turn a blind eye to it. But if she were to talk about the mistreatment she suffered at home, not to mention her husband, even Song Enshi, a young child, was spoiled and arrogant. She did not even respect her mother. It was really very sullen. Now that Song Enya was missing, she was blaming her for it. She simply could not bring herself to say anything. Song Yunshi sat at the side and didn't say anything. Song Enshi hid in her brother's arms in fear and didn't dare to make a sound. She only knew that her sister was missing, but she didn't know where she had gone. From beginning to end, Song Yunshi did not mention the transfer of assets in the account. He didn't dare to mention it. If his father knew about this, he would definitely fly into a thunderous rage and vent his anger on him. Song Yunshi only wanted to find Song Enya's whereabouts as soon as possible. As for these assets, he always suspected that Song Enya must have a need for them. As for what she wanted to do, he still did not know. Song Yunshi was afraid that she would cause an earth-shattering commotion, so he had already sent more people to search for her. Chapter 2044. There's an acquisition proposal tomorrow, and we need to start an international video conference. Got it, boss. Have you found out anything about that matter? Yes. Min Yu nodded. 7 years ago. Do you still remember how you froze and sealed the sperm in the sperm bank? Yes. 7 years ago, a private hospital under the Mu Group was preparing to carry out artificial insemination. Everything had been prepared, and all that was left was to wait for Yun Shishir's medical report. If there were no accidents, the procedure would proceed as usual. However, at that time, Yun Shishir's body was found to be unsuitable for artificial insemination due to her physical condition. Hence, they gave up on this option. The hospital sealed the sperm in the sperm bank and used a nitrogen tank to freeze and store it in case of an emergency. How did this thing fall into her hands, though? Mu Yaja looked at Min Yu suspiciously. The latter calmly said, "The person in charge of this matter has been arrested, and the investigation is ongoing." Ha! Mu Yaja coldly curled his lips and asked, "Is she still in the hospital?" "Yes. I heard that she's recuperating now. The doctor said that she's a little weak. I also heard that the doctor is going to arrange for her to undergo artificial insemination through IVF. Boss, do we need to stop her?" Mu Yaja's eyelashes drooped expressionlessly before he suddenly smiled deeply. "No need." Question mark. The assistant was stunned. "Boss, you mean," Mu Yaja faintly said, "since she's so desperate to have a child, why don't we let her get what she wants? Did she think that she could marry into the Mu family because of her son's status? She's really ambitious. But, do as I say. Don't alert her." Mu Yaja slightly propped his chin up and gently rubbed his fingertips against his lips with a playful look in his eyes. "I'd like to see what tricks she has up her sleeve." Min Yu fell silent. "Boss, do you have to be so scheming? It's scary when you're scheming." As he thought of this, he observed a moment of silence for Song Enya again. Of all people, she had to offend his boss. Ugh, she would die a horrible death. Min Yu made a cross in front of his heart. After resting for a few days, Yun Shusha returned to the set. She didn't have many scenes left, so she wanted to finish filming as soon as possible. As soon as she returned to the set, she bumped into Lin Ji. She always seemed to be able to accurately interpret the phrase "enemies on a narrow road." When Lin Ji saw her, she was so angry that smoke almost came out of her head. She glared at her like a meat grinder, gritting her teeth as if she wanted to kill her with her gaze. Yun Shusha, on the other hand, smiled. Seeing her expression, she felt happy instead. She liked it when Lin Ji hated her to the core but couldn't get rid of her. Lin Ji must have been very frustrated these past few days. The Best Actress incident at the Golden Eagle Festival was still trending online. Many people were fiercely cursing her, making up stories about her, and humiliating her. Many fans formed a jury and left comments on her Weibo, demanding that she return the title of Best Actress and apologize to Yun Shusha in person. Alas, she had already given up the title of Best Actress only because Yun Shusha felt that it was dirty and didn't want it. Lin Ji felt very wronged. She was already in this state, so what more could she do? Did she have to ruin her reputation before she would let it go? Chapter 2045. Yun Shusha walked around her, wanting to leave. But Lin Ji suddenly reached out to stop her. "What?" "Yun Shusha." Lin Ji yanked her sleeve and forced her to turn around to face her. "What do you want? Things have come to this point. It should be enough." "Enough?" Yun Shusha tilted her head, her expression cold. "What do you mean? You're the one who instigated the public opinion online. You want to use cyberviolence to put me to death. How can you be so cruel? Huh. You're really unscrupulous in order to suppress me." "Suppress?" Yun Shusha laughed coldly. "Lin Ji, you're really full of yourself. Who do you think you are? Do you need me to put in so much effort to suppress you? Since you've done it, you have to bear the consequences. You're really shameless to put the blame on others. You." Yun Shusha was eloquent. Lin Ji's level of education was nothing compared to hers. She was rendered speechless. She glared at her fiercely, as if she wanted to cut off a piece of meat from her. "Don't stare at me like that. Yun Shusha, you're still so dignified to accuse me of being shameless. What about you? Who do you think you are? You're just an actress. Do you think you're superior? Huh. I heard that you're Mu Yaja's kept mistress. You're an underground lover who can't be seen by others. Don't think that you can do whatever you want and be lawless just because you're in the limelight for a while. You're only in the limelight now. Do you think that you can become a phoenix just because you're related to the Mu group? A wealthy family like the Mu group won't tolerate a small fry like you. You can't even cross the threshold even if you want to. Don't think that you can be arrogant just because you're related to Mu Yaja. Underground lover? Yun Shishir was amused as she recalled these words. She was really jealous. Even if she was an underground lover, she seemed to be jealous. Mu Yaja's name alone was enough to attract bees and butterflies. Lin Ji said fiercely, "What? Do you think you're his legal wife? She's just a mistress he's keeping. When he's tired of you, he'll kick you away. Just as you said, I'm still in the limelight. If you offend me, aren't you afraid that I'll crush you?" She smiled elegantly. Besides, I'm not a secret lover. If she's not his secret lover, could she be his wife? Lin Ji said disdainfully, her eyes full of contempt. Dream on. Huh, I'm sorry, she smiled flirtatiously, then raised her hand slightly and gently moved her fingers. On his ring finger, there was a huge diamond that was incomparably dazzling. 2. You're so pitiful. Yun Shishir looked at her sympathetically. Why don't you ask your sugar daddy to bring you out to see the world more often? If you have the money for shady dealings, why don't you go out and see the world? It's embarrassing that you're so short-sighted. Do you think I'm like you? Treating a fake as a treasure? As she spoke, she glanced meaningfully at the diamond pendant around her neck. The so-called high-quality imitation was the use of real materials to make a one-to-one imitation of a piece of jewelry. Chapter 2046. Yun Shishir could tell at a glance because the diamond necklace she was wearing was a gift from Mu Yaja. It was a limited edition and the only one in the world. Lin Ji's necklace was obviously a fake. Yun Shishir sneered. Leaving the dumbfounded Lin Ji behind, she took a detour and walked away. Lin Ji snapped back to her senses and turned around to watch her leave. She gritted her teeth in hatred. Yun Shishir. Wow. Shishir, you're awesome. You've finally shown your prowess this time. She stood at the side and was extremely excited after witnessing what had just happened. She happened to pass by and saw that scene. She wanted to go up and help, but seeing how Yun Shishir made Lin Ji tremble in anger with just a few words, she felt relieved. Shishir, you don't know how ostentatious Lin Ji was in the production team after she came back from Sea City. Those people in the production team were praising and flattering her. I felt angry when I saw it. You don't know how detestable she is. Alright, don't be angry anymore. Of course, I'm not angry. Her. The second day after she came back, Huan Yu dealt with her. She's now a laughing stock in the production team. On the surface, they seem to be respectful, but who knows how they're laughing at her behind her back. You see, the moment you came back, she came looking for you aggressively. In the end, you gave her the cold shoulder. I think she's about to go crazy from anger. Haha. She was elated. When dealing with people like Lin Ji, there was no need to be polite or give face. Yun Shishir suddenly asked, "Where's Hua Jin?" Hua Jin? She shook her head blankly. I haven't seen him in the production team these past few days. I think he's sick and needs to rest. Oh. He's probably still in the hospital. She suddenly recalled the scene that day. Lin Shuya, that arrogant woman. Yun Shishir suddenly felt sorry for Hua Jin. She looked at her in a daze and asked curiously, "Shishir, what's wrong with you? You're thinking about something." No. Yun Shishir smiled and said, "I'm going to do my makeup. There are still 2 more scenes." Yes. You don't have many scenes left. You'll probably be done in a few days. Yun Shishir went to the dressing room to get ready. She changed her clothes and put on makeup. She had been resting at home for the past few days and went through the rest of the script. Because she was very familiar with it and her performance was on point, she basically passed it in one take. After that, Mu Shi and Yun Shishir chatted and laughed as they made their way to the parking lot. The parking lot of the film city was very big, but there were not many street lights, so the light was dim. Yun Shishir was in the midst of joking with her assistant when she suddenly saw a stretched limousine slowly driving toward them from a distance. At first, they did not pay much attention to it. It was only when the limousine drove toward them and stopped in front of them that Yun Shishir reacted abruptly. After the limousine came to a steady stop, the door opened and a few men in black alighted. They eyed them covetously. Mu Shi immediately raised her guard and looked at them warily. She asked coldly, "Why are you stopping the car here? Who are you?" Yun Shishir. A woman's cold voice came from the limousine. Yun Shishir looked in the direction of the voice and saw an elegantly dressed woman alighting from the car with the help of someone. She recognized the woman in front of her at a glance. Mu Shumin? Chapter 2047. He. How have you been? Mu Shumin sneered and took a few steps toward her. However, Mu Shi realized that this woman's legs seemed to be sluggish, as if she had suffered some injury, for it was strenuous for her to walk. Yun Shishir suddenly recalled that, on the day of the engagement ceremony, Mu Shumin had come to the scene to provoke her. In the end, she was beaten to a pulp by Gong Jie's men. She had probably never suffered such humiliation in her life, so she must be bearing a grudge against her. Now, she had brought people here to cause trouble. They were probably here to get back the face they had lost on the day of the engagement ceremony. Now, they had the advantage of numbers and were aggressive. It was obvious that they were not here with good intentions. Mu Shi panicked. She pulled Yun Shishir and retreated a few steps as she glared at them warily. "What are you guys trying to do?" Mu Shumin smiled maliciously and did not want to say anything more to her. He waved his hand and said in a chilling tone, "Teach her a lesson. Teach her a lesson." As soon as he said that, a few men in black behind him immediately walked toward Yun Shishir and Mu Shi. Mu Shi screamed in fright. Judging from their stance, they were obviously going to lay a hand on them. Oh, God! Who exactly is this woman? Mu Shi did not recognize where this woman came from, but the men in black behind her looked like real weapons. If they were to really lay a hand on them, breaking a few ribs would be considered a small matter. Mu Shi said indignantly, "This is the film studio. There are so many media reporters here. Don't you think it's shameful for you to be violent toward two weak women in public?" "Weak women? Ha!" Mu Shumin looked at Yun Shishir. "I think you're the reincarnation of a vixen. I don't know what sorcery you used to charm that lad. If I don't teach you a lesson today, I think you won't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Yun Shishir, however, was strangely calm. "Are you here to teach me a lesson? Does Mu Yaja know about this?" "Shut up. Don't use that B** to pressure me." "Why? In terms of seniority, I'm his elder. Do you think I have to care about that lad's face when I teach a B** a lesson?" Yun Shishir said, "You can't say that. What have I done to offend you that you have to make things difficult for me?" Knowing that she was stalling for time, Mu Shumin waved his hand and gave his order. "You have a sharp tongue." As soon as the order was given, a group of men in black walked towards them. These were Mu Shumin's personal bodyguards, and each of them was an elite. Naturally, their attacks were thunderous. Yun Shishir only felt a gust of wind sweep past her. Unknowingly, a fully armed man appeared beside her and shielded her with his hands, blocking that aggressive slap. Mu Shumin was stunned. The night was too dark for her to see clearly where this man came from. His skills were swift and fierce, but judging from his posture, he was well trained and seemed to be a special mercenary. Chapter 2048. Mu Shumin was frightened by the sudden appearance of several well-trained bodyguards. She was so shocked that she took a few steps back and cried out in panic. A few of the bodyguards at the side reached out and shielded her behind them. She only calmed down a little because there were people protecting her. She snorted coldly. She recognized at a glance who these black-clothed bodyguards who suddenly rushed out were. Mu Yaja had a team of well-trained bodyguards. These bodyguards were mostly made up of outstanding mercenaries. Among them, there were even some outstanding ones who were soldiers who had retired from the battlefront. They were all warriors who had walked out from under the muzzle of a gun. They had experienced all kinds of cruel battlefields, big and small. They were brave and resourceful. Some of them even had military ranks and were born heroes. Looking at the entire Mu family, probably only someone with a status like Mu Yaja could control such a powerful team. Mu Shumin guessed that these people were probably sent by Mu Yaja to protect Yunshushi. She was immediately furious. Could it be that this brat had really been bewitched by a ghost? When she asked him for a few bodyguards, Mu Yaja did not even agree. Now, he actually sent these people to protect this lowly woman. It was really infuriating. In just a few minutes, it was obvious who had the upper hand. Although Mu Shumin's bodyguards were all well-trained, they were still no match for these bloodthirsty warriors. They were quickly defeated. After a few punches, they were beaten to a pulp and were looking for their teeth on the ground. These guys were even considered to be merciful and did not use their full strength. Mu Shumin could not hold it in anymore. Her face turned ashen and her face turned pale. She immediately shouted angrily, "How dare you? How dare you do that? Do you know who I am? How dare you touch my people?" However, no one paid any attention to her stern questioning. Mu Shumin could not take it anymore. She cursed hysterically, "Are you crazy? Don't you have eyes? I told you to stop. Didn't you hear me?" Just as she finished speaking, one of her most valued bodyguards was sent flying with a kick. He fell beside her and was kicked in the ribs. He rolled on the ground in pain. The other party was tall and strong, with an average height of 1.88 centimeters. Coupled with the hard leather shoes on their feet, such a strong force was bound to break a few ribs. Mu Shumin did not expect such a turn of events and screamed in shock. "How dare you? You! Are you all crazy? You guys! Are you guys crazy? I'm Yaja's aunt. All of you, stop." Mu Mushi, who was standing beside Yunshushi, was shocked by her words. Because she was not. Yunshushi had Mu Yaja's support, but she did not have a big shot to take care of her. How could she dare to offend her? She could not afford to offend her. A man in black from the other party stared at her with a sharp gaze. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. He was unusually fierce, like a beast eyeing its prey. His aura was terrifying. Mu Shumin was so frightened that she retreated to the side of the car. She trembled in fear from the man's terrifying aura. Chapter 2049. Although his attitude was still respectful, the meaning of his words was already very clear. Mu Shumin's face turned pale as she glared hatefully at Yunshushi, who was standing behind him to protect her. She only saw the latter standing expressionlessly at the same spot and looking at her calmly. This only made her feel even more resentful. When she heard what he said, she gritted her teeth. This brat's soul had been stolen by this woman. She was his elder. For the sake of a despicable woman, he dared to go against her and beat up her men. She was furious. However, now that the other party's men were all present, she knew very well that, at least for today, she would not be able to do anything to Yunshushi. Ever since the incident at the engagement ceremony, she had been recuperating for almost a month. Now, her injuries had not healed and she had broken a few bones. Even walking a few steps was difficult for her. After returning to the Mu residence, the more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Hence, she was determined to teach this arrogant woman a lesson. Mu Shumin had mentioned this to Mu Linfeng, but Mu Linfeng had chastised her. Are you crazy? Don't you know Yunshishi's identity? Her younger brother is the chief commander of Hurricane Group, Gong Jie. Do you know the family behind Hurricane Group? That's the Gong family. If you want to go against her, you're going against the Gong family. If you do anything to Yunshishi, the Gong family will not sit back and do nothing. The Gong family? Mu Shumin clearly knew very little about Gong Jie. Mu Linfeng sneered. If you'd put in more effort, you wouldn't have been led by the nose by that brat. Mu Shumin was indignant. The engagement ceremony was an accident. If she had brought enough men with her, she would not have been afraid of the Gong family. However, she was more or less in awe of Mu Linfeng's words. During those few days, she lay down to recuperate. However, the more she thought about it, the angrier she became. The Gong family actually dared to cause trouble in the Mu family's territory. If this were to spread, how many people would laugh at her? Mu Shumin could not take this lying down. Hence, when she heard that Yunshishi had been filming for the past few days, she gathered a group of men and was determined to show her her authority as an elder. She would never acknowledge Yunshishi as her niece-in-law. Look! She had not even stepped into the Mu family's doorstep, but she was already so arrogant. How could she tolerate it? They hadn't even officially married into the family, yet he was already giving her such a big face. He didn't take her seriously at all. What would happen if she let her niece into the family? She could not make any decisions on Mu Yaja's side. She could only watch as Yunshishi was spoiled by that disappointing nephew of hers. How could she tolerate it when she was so arrogant? However, at this moment, she was once again rebuffed. If Mu Shumin did not care about her reputation and the men protecting Yunshishi, she would have lost control and rushed forward to give her a few slaps. Good. Good. Ha, Yunshishi, you're really something. Mu Shumin could not take it anymore and cursed a few more times.